Okay. All right. We are live. Are we live?
We're
I think we're
live.
live. All right.
Live as
Hello.
we're gonna
Welcome,
get.
everyone, to the AP DOJO. My name is Ben Dunn, the AP Sensei, founder of Antarctic Press, creator of such comics as Ninja High School, Warrior Nun, Mighty Tiny, Marvel Manga, and a host of other books. And next to me is my good friend and compatriot, Steve-O, whose real name is Steve Rice, who is the writer of such comics as Zetraman and the creator of Chesty Sanchez and many, many other comics. We've known each other for decades. And and it's amazing that he's still friends with me,
Since
So it's one of those
since
things.
the 80s, the
Yep.
heyday, the golden age of anime and
Yeah,
indie
well,
comics.
that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the past, present, and future of the comic book publishing industry. Now, a lot has changed. I mean, I established Non-Inert Press in 1985. And oh gosh, when did I meet you, Steve? I think I know you sent in a submission to the yearbook, Ninja High School yearbook in '89. So I must have known you at least a couple of years before then. I think
Yes.
did you write to me? I think it was like in '87 or '88 or something like that.
So I got the orange trade of Ninja High School at the San Diego Comic-Con back when it was at the old convention center.
Oh yeah, when Eternity Comics was publishing it. Yes, I remember
Yes.
that.
So I got that, and so I sent you a fan letter, and then you actually answered back, and then I sent you another letter, and I forgot how many letters we went back and forth with, but I eventually called you, and
I do
and
remember that.
yeah, so I called you, and then there was like a lot of long phone conversations, and then I submitted something the thing I submitted to Magazine. Probably like it wasn't the first volume. It must have been the second volume. It was like a tribute to like the Space Sheriff. Well, the problem was I wanted to do a Space Sheriff pastiche, and I would send the VHS tapes of the shows I was able to get to the artist, and the artist would go like, "Yeah, I'm not drawing that," and they would, and they just kind of made it look like one guy, the guy who eventually drew it, made him look like old-fashioned Iron Man. And then some of the artists wanted to put a cape on him, and I'm like, "No, they don't have capes. The capes get tangled up in all that fighting." And they're like, "No, no, it's gonna have a cape."
Well, it's interesting because my kid Cal, who's like 20 years old, no, 19 years old, and he doesn't know how to write a letter. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean that's the thing is that we're in a generation now. People
Mhm.
don't know how to write letters, and they text on their phone, with their little shortcuts and emojis and whatever. Yeah, I'm sounding like an old man, like an old fart right now.
Yeah.
So but when you and I were corresponding, we correspond with letters, and it would take days for us to get letters, and we would reply. But the thing about it was that when you write a letter, you have to think about what you're writing.
Yeah.
It's slow and methodical, and you have to be careful what you're saying to each other. And then you have to eagerly anticipate that you're going to get a reply. You don't always get a reply,
Mhm.
and sometimes you'll be sitting there waiting for a reply, and you're never going to get it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we were both prolific letter writers, so that was one of the things that got us to eventually get to know each other more and more, and that's how you build a relationship right now.
Yeah.
People don't know how to do relationships anymore, and that's the problem with the comic book industry, is that people don't know how to create relationships. They think that because they get a lot of views, that people can contact you through the internet or through their
Mhm.
phones, is that just because someone replies to me, oh, he's my friend now.
Mm.
are, you,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody would, I mean, I figured like if you were committed enough to type out a letter and put it in an envelope and address the envelope and put a stamp on it and mail it, it's kind of like, oh, well, this is an open
You're
invitation
invested in
for,
that.
yeah. It's
You're
like,
invested in that relationship.
right.
And that's the thing, is that people think they don't know how to create relationships, and that's the problem with. I think that's one of the fundamental problems with the comic book industry, is that no one knows how to create relationships, or at least not long-lasting relationships. It's
Right.
all about and that's something that really is a one of the key, people say, oh yeah, it's the content, people are being blah 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 blah. No, it's the way people are treating each other is how it's what's killing the industry. To be honest,
Oh yeah.
when a perfect example is this, just other comic book creators for some reason, and I don't understand this. Don't get me wrong. Comic creators in history have always been jerks. Okay. Really, I mean, you
It's
have to
true.
be,
That is true.
you
We've had
have
to,
to be egotistical to the hilt to be a comic book creator.
right.
Really, okay. They think that they're an artist. They can draw. They can write. Like they're all hot shit. I'm the best there is. Hate to break it to you, fella. There's a lot of competition out there. And the key to success, I think, if you want to make it in the comic industry, is to build up relationships with other people. I mean, no man is an island, and that's the problem. Is that for some reason they feel like they have to attack half their customer base or half potential customer base, by saying, I don't agree with what you said, so I'm immediately going to attack you, instead of trying to understand, why that person said that, or try to be, they're all about, oh, you got to be empathetic, but they're the least tolerant, least empathetic people on the face of the earth. They don't want to hear what you have to say. All they know is that you've triggered them in some fashion, and I think that's really detrimental.
Triggering was not a word we used back in the day. Hey, we got Nervo Violin at 5090.
Oh, Nervo Violin. Let's see what he has to say. Hello. Just a few minutes. What I missed? Oh, you missed a lot, buddy.
Yeah, we're just warming up. Don't worry about it.
we're talking about we're talking about all those young people out there who don't know simple things as writing a letter, sending a fax, answering.
They don't know that a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think we're like in the generation where people don't know any of that stuff. We're becoming less and less tactile.
Oh man, I work in retail, and the parents trying to get their kids just to talk to me to ask for what they want. I've run into shy kids for decades, but nothing like the last 5 years or so. It's amazing.
The thing is, one of the things I always wanted to tell the creators who do this kind of crap, where they feel compelled to immediately attack, other people because they don't agree with their, politics or religion or whatever. Just shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. No one wants to listen to what you have to say. The thing is that back in my day, if you had an opinion, you had to write a letter to the editor, or you had to write a letter to the people you don't disagree with, or and that took a long time. It took investment, investment. And now people can just do it right away, and what really irritates me is the use of the F word. Okay, it seems like it used to be. Oh, so you shouldn't say that. It's that to me is the lowest form of communication. Lowest form of communication. If you have to resort to the F word, you've run out of ideas. Okay, you have run out. You are totally intellectually vapid. Okay, you have.
You mean in the argument, not just because a well-placed F word can make an impact. So.
It can, but you see, if you use it so often, it's just like saying anything too often. It's just that sooner or later it's going to be used to the point where it loses all meaning. It's like
for a lot of people they use it instead of or
like the word. I mean, just like the N word. The ones from the German people from 1930s. Where they use that word so and they don't probably even know what that really means. I mean, you ask somebody,
you mean
what does a Nazi really mean? Oh, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. What is it? Okay, fuck, I'll just go ahead and say it. What does a Nazi really mean? What is it? Does anyone know what it means? He says, oh yeah, so you know what it stands for? It stands for National Socialism. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what it means. And people don't understand. They don't understand the meaning of it. They just know it's a bad word.
They understand the cartoon version of it. Hey, yeah. David Schlosser 3946, welcome.
Oh, yes. What
Like,
does he say? He says, my staff sergeant in the Marines had a buck jar. Whenever we cussed in the office, it helped us curb our sway for. Oh, I wish there was like a digital version of that. That would
yeah,
be so awesome. If the creators had to had to donate $1 to every time they attack somebody, boy, that would take care of our deficit, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
that
David
$1
Foster
like,
says, hi, howdy,
yeah.
howdy. We are from Texas. You know what they say? Only two things comes from Texas, steers and queers, and I don't see no horns on you, boy. So, uh,
Oh boy.
so I mean, that to me, it's
Well, well, I think I think like the attacking thing. Part of that comes from like the mainstreaming. The MCU was a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways, and I think because again, back in the day, comics was a very culty thing, and like you would put up with the biggest asshole in your school if he was the only other guy that liked comic books, right? And you put up
oh
with
yeah,
a
the stereotypical nerd is, oh, you
yeah,
read
and
comic
you
books.
well, no, not I don't mean the bullies. I mean, it's like you're the two guys in that whole school like comics, and like the other guy's an asshole. The other guy's it's always the other guy who's the asshole. But you put up with that other asshole just so you could have somebody to talk about comics with. But the
Well,
and I'm pointing at you, Ben. I'm not pointing. But, but
well,
the thing is, like the where was I going with this? Oh, so now the creator and so like it was like when you go when the creators would go to a comic convention, that was like their weekend to be a celebrity. The rest of the time they're just toiling over an artboard and nobody cared, and maybe they'd get a fan letter or something during the week, but now it's kind
well,
of like you're on
that's
24/7.
you actually bring up a good point. Is that now with the digital tech, with social media and everything
Mhm.
like that, here's another
Nervo Violin's got it.
from Nero Violin. Back in middle school, traded my seat for an X-Force 2, all because this guy wanted to
Sit next to a girl.
sit next to. I think he means sit next to a girl.
Yeah.
And said, "Ah, oh, really? X-Force #2. Wow, that's a hot book, wasn't it? Back in the
Yeah.
day."
For sure. So, but I think like a lot of the creators think that they're celebrity, especially if they've got a live
Well,
stream.
no, see, that's the thing about celebrity, especially in the comic industry. There's no celebrity in the comic. I mean, there's like maybe 1% of 1% are they're coming. But you see that about social media is now everyone thinks they can be a celebrity. I
Right.
mean, there was a what was it? Uh, Andrew Warhol who said it. Is that everyone will have their 15-second of fame, and
Yeah.
then and
2 minutes. Yeah.
now you can get your fame by doing something outrageously stupid, or try to get clicks, by saying something outrageously stupid or behaving the outrage. I think the
Well, you can
reason
be
why
famous
things
by
have gotten
being
so bad is
infamous.
because people don't understand the consequences of their stupidity. I mean,
Yeah.
my dad used to tell me, when I was growing up, he says, whatever you do, don't do anything stupid. You know, because that's just
Well,
that's
define
really what it comes
stupid,
down to.
Dad.
I mean, think about it. You see all these people. It's like they're people are committing crimes and they're recording it. I mean, how dumb do you have to be to record you breaking the law? All
because
right.
they don't think they're going to get caught, and
Well,
then it
they're
goes
fucking
viral, and
recording it and they're sharing it. See, that's what the hell. I mean,
I
that is
know.
such idiotic behavior. And the thing is, I read somewhere that people are actually getting dumber. And it's like,
You had to read that. Just
I
look
mean,
around.
I can't say, oh, surely that can't be true, but then I mean, and then I read that movie Idiocracy, where you're familiar with that Mike Judge's Idiocracy movie. No
Oh
one
yeah,
told me that was going to be a documentary. You
yeah,
know, I
yeah.
mean, it's everyone thought, oh yeah, so that movie, that's so stupid. That would never come true, but here we are,
Oh yeah.
2026, and it's slowly coming true. And
Mhm.
I think that's and the thing about it is that if you think about comics as a medium, it's a visual medium, yes, but it's also a prose medium too as well. It's a combination, it's a beautiful combination of art and words. Okay, and then a lot of people don't know this, but comics is an American invention. Okay,
Right.
comics started here in America.
Right.
All right, this country is the birthplace of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're being our asses kicked by manga. And
Okay, so for most of my, like, starting in the mid late 80s, I got into Judge Dredd in 2000 AD. And so over time, I got farther and farther away from American comics. I still kept my toe in, and like when something was really big, like I got Spawn and all that. And I was interested in American indies, and a lot of the manga that was coming over. But like as far as the superhero stuff, Marvel, DC, I just kind of like my boat drifted away from that and was very entrenched in the 2000 AD stuff. And I saw the very first stories that like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Garth Ennis, all the very first ones that they were publishing in 2000 AD in real time. And it was like, oh, who's this guy? He just did a short story that had a surprise ending, but it was amazing. And frankly, Neil Gaiman did some of those stories too, and he wasn't very good back then.
hey, we all have to start somewhere, my friend. We all
Yeah,
have to start somewhere.
his short stories were not great, but
Well, I mean,
but so I saw that. So they they took they took a lot of what we were doing. Like they were from what my understanding of it, a lot of them were the first generation of British comic creators who were as inspired by American stuff as they were British stuff. Because British comics kind of had to stick it up their butt, but they were very charming, and the artwork was generally really good, and they were kind of quirky. And then 2000 AD came along and did that, but then put an American spin into it. And then there was one of the main creators of 2000 AD was really into European comics, so he dumped that in there too. So they blended that up, and it was wild. And then a lot of them came over and worked for DC Comics, and I don't think they had the guard. They kind of needed the guardrails that 2000 D had, because when some of the stuff they did for Vertigo was just like too out there, and I don't think it resonated with as many people as they thought.
well, I
But,
mean, is 2000 AD still publishing?
oh yeah,
Okay, so
well,
they're still in business.
there's publishing as any other smaller independent publishers publishing, but
Well, I mean, I'm sure are they still as successful as they were back in
no,
the
God,
heyday?
no, no. If we've famously said, so for background for the two people or however many people listening, I do another podcast every week it's mostly about 2000 AD. Well, the first two thirds is like old guys complaining about stuff, and then the last third of it's reviewing the 2000 that issue of 2000 AD. And so we've said like lately for the past few years at least, that if I could just walk away from, if it wasn't for that podcast, I'd probably walk away from it and never look back. It's not been good, but
Oh, that's sad to hear.
it's a shame, because at one point that was like the pinnacle of comics. I mean, you look at all the guys who
Well, yeah, I mean, Alan Moore got his start. Brian Ballin got his start there. I mean,
Brian Bolland,
yeah.
Kevin O'Neill,
Oh,
Marshall
yeah.
Waugh, Nemesis Warlock,
Some real
crazy stuff.
legends got their start there. Kevin
People who
McGuire.
never really resonated here, really, really, uh, they're they're legends over in the
Well, I
UK.
mean,
But
there was a time where uh, during the 80s, there was the British invasion. I mean, Alan Moore led
yeah,
the way, and we were getting a lot of British comics. Even Marvel,
yeah,
started doing British comics and things like that. So for a point that we thought British comics were going to take over the comic industry, but they haven't really. They didn't have the impact that manga certainly has made. Ooh,
no,
here's another. Here's
it's a
another one from Nero. Let's see what Nero Violence says. Meta
Metal
Hurlant,
Hurlant.
I believe, started that push, giving an outlet for your artists and writers, much like the American. Plus, a lot of boobies didn't hurt either.
Right. Well, there was some I can't like N what was it NBM, weren't they bringing over those graphic novel ones?
Yeah, I believe so, but they never really made that much of an impact in the comic industry. I mean,
No, in fact, I had
definitely not as much as 2000 AD did with Judge Dredd, and
yeah,
with Alan Moore. Alan Moore basically single-handedly, broke open the whole British invasion of comics back in the 80s,
yeah.
But the thing about Alan Moore, he's just one guy. He can't, you know,
Well, I mean, I would argue, even though Neil Gaiman's 2000 AD work wasn't like the best for 2000 AD, I mean, he started, he that was like at the beginning of his career, and look at where he took it.
mhm.
Unfortunately, look at where he took it now. But
I mean, like Nero Violin is correct. Like heavy metal certainly came in, with a bang,
mhm,
because and the thing about it is that that's sort of different in a way because it was a magazine as it wasn't a comic, So
yeah,
and it definitely was aimed at a more mature readership, and so the problem with like heavy metal did get an audience for sure, but it didn't make it into the zeitgeist of, the American pop culture until the movie came out. When the movie
right.
came out, that really, made a big impact. But the thing about that was that other than the movie, again, heavy metal didn't really explode in the way that manga has because European comics, you're talking a whole different kettle of fish compared to manga because manga is a factory.
Mhm,
Okay, and that's the thing. Europeans treat comics like works of art.
yeah,
Okay, it takes its
they are
own sweet
cultural
time, you know,
institutions.
and and they don't rush it, because it'll get finished when it gets finished because they don't work on, the kind of schedule that American comics and manga work on. You know,
Well, you know what took me a while to figure out, because 'cause I'm dense? Um, I started watching that Valerian movie, the Valerian and the
that movie was so boring.
okay, so, well, follow my I'm not gonna say it's a good movie, but I started
Okay.
watching it, and I was really tired, and I fell asleep after the first third of it, but I was like, "You know what? There was something about it that I wanna come back and see someday." So, I like, maybe a couple of years after it came out, I watched it again, and I really enjoyed it, and it was like I s and I realized that a lot of European comics are like this, like we were talking, like I was saying, like, there was, like, heavy metal, and then there were other, like, publishers trying to bring European comics over, but they were, like, album size, and they were expensive, and we didn't know who the characters were, and they looked kinda weird, and, they tried to bring over, like, Lucky Luke and those Blueberry
Yeah,
West
they're sort of
ones.
prestigious for. Okay, so that brings up a good point. So,
Oh, so wait, let me go back, let me finish
okay,
the Valerian thought. So I was watching it, and at the time, another company tried to bring over, um the Valerian books to kind of tie into the movie. They thought, oh, there'll be excitement for the because of the movie, which didn't happen. And also, Humanoids was doing those Jodorowsky books, the Incal and
wasn't that Mobius?
Metazones. Uh, Mobius did the art
Oh,
for
okay.
some of them, and but there's a guy like Jose Jimenez, I think his name is. They were all like really good uh, Spanish artists, some and plus the erotic stuff like, what's the girl with the big butt?
Hmm.
There there's there's a heavy metal character, and it's
Tarna?
no, it's
No,
a
that's from the movie.
yeah,
That
she's,
that
like,
was from the
naked.
movie.
Tarna, I'm not even sure exactly
I
where
don't think she actually appeared in the comic book
yeah,
itself.
I don't think she appeared until, like, years
Yeah,
later when they were,
until
like,
years
trying to
later.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they know they can
Any
monetize it.
Yeah, but anyway, so I was watching the Valerian movie, and I was realized I thought, they aren't following like a traditional storytelling. It's not like the three act format, or basically you're just like hanging out with cool characters and seeing them do cool stuff with cool scenarios and cool designs and maybe some nudity, and then you read 64 pages that and then we'll see you again next year. And they're good with that. It doesn't have to be like bam, 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 story, 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 plot. It's just kind of like, oh, they said something amusing, and I was entertained, and it was beautiful, and all that. And that kind of was how the Valerian movie worked, but it didn't work obviously for enough
Well,
people to.
it was definitely European. I mean, the thing is
Yeah.
that I will tell you it was beautiful to look at, but I
Hmm.
could not get invested in the characters or the story. I didn't even know what the story was about, to be honest. You
Well,
know,
was there a story?
there was a story. Yeah, oh, I don't know. It's like like that skit that Eddie Izzard did about European and American movies.
Yeah.
Like European movies, it's like someone walk in and there's this, what is it, Sebastian? I'm arranging matches.
Yeah.
And then the American movies like, oh no, we're being attacked by space monkeys. Run away.
Yeah.
And things like that. And you're like eating popcorn, like, it's like,
Yeah. Well,
but
which is why our movies translate, not to be arrogant, but the better ones translate better all over the world.
well, I mean, you bring up a good point. Is that the thing about it is that Europe has a different attitude toward
Hmm.
comics. Or graphic novels. I don't know how they. I don't think they even call
Bande
them comics.
dessinée.
Yeah, this is les comics. So, but
So David Schlosser says the British invasion offered more adult content as opposed to just the superhero comics that most kids grew up with. They had maturing choices. When
yeah, and
Akira hit,
violence.
yeah,
They
when
upped the
Akira hit
violence.
in body horror, when Akira hit in the '80s, it jumped my interest. Okay, so to that point, they were also much more literate. Like they were borrowing from books and things that were not. They were inspired by things that were not comic books. They were getting like outsider, crazy, the occult, especially with Grant Morrison, a little bit with Alan Moore. They were inspired by the guy who writes Judge Dredd, or one of the guys who's credited as being one of the creators of Judge Dredd. He said that he mostly just reads like detective novels now, like real mystery novels, not so much comic
Mhm.
books. So they were
Well,
bringing in like new stuff that was new to comics at the time. Um, so that was one thing. One new influence was the British stuff, and the other was the manga stuff. And like it was weird. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the first three comics that Viz brought over? It wasn't what we want. We wanted Mobile Suit Gundam. Damn it, we wanted we wanted
actually,
some
the thing is
mecha,
that
and we
there would
wanted
have been the thing about it is that Gundam was not really that well known outside the anime community.
it
So even if
certainly was.
they did bring Gundam, but they were just like those, photo novels,
Yeah,
type things. The things there's no actual, the anime came before the manga. Okay,
right.
so not the other way around. Usually you start with a manga, then you do the anime. But in Mobile Suit Gundam's thing, it was the anime that came before the manga.
Right.
And then all the manga that came afterwards was based on the anime series.
Right, but
So
if they
there's
had
no
brought,
one
but you
creator who's
you
credited for
you
Gundam.
right,
You
but
know,
you would have preferred like one of the more mecha mangas instead of Area 88, Mai the Psychic Girl, and Kamui. It was like,
I
what
would
the
have
hell,
preferred they
guys?
brought Go Nagai over Mazinger Z, bang, right there,
There you
first
go.
issue. But
Right.
they didn't do that. They what they probably got. This is probably what happened. Okay, Eclipse Comics went to Viz.
Hmm.
Viz says, "Oh, these are what's popular now."
Hmm.
Okay, so you should do these. Yeah, and then I'm sure Eclipse didn't know. Duh. Let's just give us the manga. So
I don't even give him that much credit. I think what happened
that's
was,
exactly probably what happened. I mean, I can't say for sure. Don't hold me on it.
well,
But I have enough experience to know that this is probably what happened. Because I'll tell you, Kat Ironwood, I think she was the editor at the time at
yeah.
Eclipse. I she may have been familiar with manga. I'm pretty sure she
Hmm.
was. Because otherwise she wouldn't have pursued it. But
Right.
it is and she probably just got whatever they threw at her. Says we have
Yeah.
these available. She probably looked at them and says, "I'll take that, and that." And that's how they ended up with what they did. So we got Mai the Psychic Girl, we got Justy, we
Yeah.
got
Which
you
which
know
all the well, Justin was Dark Horse if I remember, but
oh, Dark Horse,
I,
you're correct. Yes,
I
that's
think
correct. And that's another thing. Dark Horse.
they dipped their
started doing
toe in
manga
too.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and nobody. I mean, like if you were an anime fan or a manga fan, you'd never heard of it. Half of these series, like
No,
even
and
Justice.
and Studio Proteus brought a little known artist by the name of Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa to the United States, and
Oh, that's right. That's
nobody gave a
100%.
shit about that manga when it came out. You
Yeah.
know, so um,
Well, the
let's see.
manga, the
Got
anime
another
version of
comment
that.
from
Oh, go ahead.
Violin. Oh, David Schlosser. Is that his name? David
Nero
Schlosser.
Violin said, "Dragon Ball is what turned me to manga. I did not need
Show.
to be
Okay, he
able
says the
to
British
read."
invasion offered more adult content as opposed to just the superhero comics. Like, well, that's true. Yeah, mature. I mean, that's not to say British comics didn't have kid comics. They did. In
Oh, they've
fact,
got
if I recall,
Beano,
there's a
Dandy,
British comic
Eagle.
that did created Dennis the Menace. You know.
Well, it's a very different Dennis the Menace. It's just a
Well,
year
it
later.
did offer an alternative for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, the comic book industry was maturing. A lot of kids who were growing up during the '60s and '70s were becoming adults, so they knew that they wanted something a little bit more mature. Okay, let's see what
Hey, number mine.
Nero Violin says. He says, uh, "Dragon Ball is what turned me into manga. I do not need to be able to read it to understand it. Well, it does help to read it,
Mhm.
but you're right. It is definitely a a easier manga to follow, but it's also a very long manga. It's been around since the '80s,
It's a
so
lot of
it's
fighting.
yeah. So let's see what here David Foster says. A lot of stuff never popped out locally. I saw Nausicaa and Battle Angel leading my story. Oh yes, we just talked about that. Okay, let's see. My This Psychic Girl got me into manga. See, I mean, definitely, the early manga output did start just like a lot of manga fans, just like Ninja High School did, back in the day. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
the thing.
to be fair, I really love to this day, My the Psychic Girl is one of my favorite comics. So even though I was like at the time I was like, "What is this? I want to see robots fighting." It won me over.
Yeah,
And
it was a good manga. It
Kamui was
was,
really exciting too. I like that. Area
but nobody
88,
talks about her anymore.
yeah, I know. It's crazy.
That,
Area 88 I never really fell in love with, and I didn't love Justy.
well, you weren't a gearhead, that's for sure. Yeah,
No,
not
no.
like Ted Nomura.
I
He
was gonna
loved
say
everything.
there's another guy that you probably spent like
Yes,
years.
he was definitely a pioneer. The thing was is that we filled a niche, Antarctic Press. We filled a niche that was not being served at the time,
Right.
and that's another key element of our success, or at least our longevity. I would probably use the word success quite, loosely.
Just
Let's
say,
just say the
make
definition
your
of our
victory
success is that we're
loop.
still around.
Make your victory lap. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Say it.
yeah. Well, so that's the thing about also, we've lost touch with our past as far as
Mhm,
comics are concerned.
mhm,
Which I mean, I can understand it. It's change is inevitable.
mhm.
Okay, and we have to learn to accept it. If we or and adapt. If we don't learn to
Right,
accept and adapt, we're going to go the way of the dodo bird. And
right.
that's the thing. And believe me, Anarch Press has been around for over 40 years, and I can literally name hundreds of comic book companies that have sprung up, and have disappeared,
Yeah.
and are lost to the winds of time. And a
Mhm,
lot of them were very well funded, had lots of, startup money,
mhm.
and yet they all failed. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Remember
Why, why,
Techno Comics?
why is the mortality rate of comic book publishers so high in this industry? It's almost as bad as fast food restaurants, you know,
Mhm,
and movies and things like that. And there's a lot of parallels to the movie industry and the comic industry. Okay,
mhm,
if you think about it, movie theaters, comic book stores, both physical locations.
mhm,
Okay, movies are entertainment, comics are entertainment.
mhm,
Okay, and both of them are suffering greatly from uh, forces that are causing their demise, forces so socially and creatively,
mhm.
and that's the thing that we need to address is that in order for either one of them to survive, we have to look at ourselves and have a fundamental coming to Jesus meeting as far as, where we are going to be in the future.
Hmm.
Okay. Things are moving rapidly, both in the technology field and the creative field.
Hmm.
Okay. And the way people are behaving now, and a lot of people are saying, maybe social media wasn't such a good idea. Oh, here's another one. Number 9 says manga is harder on the wallet if it's a large series. Well,
Yeah, it's
it's
harder on the
maybe
shelf
hard
space too.
initially, but at least it's something you can follow. You
Hmm.
know, how long did you hold on to Mighty Tiny before you did the Kickstarter? Oh, I did Mighty Tiny in '89. That was when I started the series. I haven't done anything since then. So because I've just been distracted with other things.
Yeah, I
And
keep trying to
Mighty
kick
Tiny
his
is one
ass
of those.
number 9, but he doesn't want to go back to it.
Well, Mighty Tiny is one of those series that I want it to be perfect. I don't want to just put out a Mighty Tiny series just because I want to put out a Mighty Tiny series. It has to be the right story, and I have to be in the right frame of mind to want to do it. So I'll return to it someday, but we'll see what happens. But when we come back to my train of thought. Okay, so um, you know, when Diamond went out of business, that should have been a clarion call to the comic industry that there's something fundamentally wrong, with our current business model,
Yeah,
and what are we going to do about it?
nothing.
Well, the problem right now is that what choices do we have as
Mhm.
an industry? Okay, we have small distributors, probably like Lunar and Massive, and Penguin, and what is the other one?
Bilbo,
Uh, who does
Bilbo,
the hmm? who
Bilbo.
does who does the Marvel? Mm,
I think
Random, Random House,
they're
right?
Penguin
So
Random House.
they so and Penguin look so they don't. If you really want the honest God truth, Penguin and Random House, they don't give a shit about comics.
No.
Okay, they're only doing it because you know uh, it's of the IP, and because Marvel and DC are big companies, and big companies like to work with other big companies.
Hmm.
Okay, they don't give a shit about anybody else who doesn't do $1 million or less.
Hmm.
Okay, if they don't do that kind of money, then you're not serious, and they're,
Yeah.
they're not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. I mean, there's probably some exceptions. I won't say that's just true with everyone. There are probably some publishers, small publishers out there, but they're usually like the big ones, like Dark Horse and IDW and things like that, and that's fine.
Hmm.
That's good, but those companies cannot. Penguin and Random, they don't distribute manga as far as I know. They don't. I think Viz does its own, distribution,
Well,
its own
okay.
distribution model. Huh?
All right. So I'm gonna put on my bookseller hat, and
Okay.
so Penguin Random House is the same company now. There's only 5 major publishers, and everything else is an imprint of them.
So it's the same company with just a different name?
It used to be Penguin, and it used to be Random House, and now it's Penguin Random House. It's all one.
Oh,
I forgot who bought who, but they're all the same thing. So
well, okay, so Penguin Random, they do DC, right? Or does that, uh,
so
do
they
they,
I forgot who owns Warner Brothers, but the Penguin Random House as a distributor of comic books, that's that's its own thing. But they are one of the biggest publishers. There's 5 big publishers: Simon and Schuster, Hachette, Penguin Random House. You have to say it all as one word, and then I forgot who the other one was. So anyway, so there's five of them, and then I don't, like you said, I'm not exactly sure why they decided to distribute comic books, because the book industry's got a book distributor. One of the biggest ones is called Ingram, and they're the ones that get the books into bookstores. So you can order either directly from the publisher, or you can get your stuff from a distributor called Ingram. And Ingram's a little faster because that's all they do. They're not publishing and promoting and doing everything else. They just move the stuff out to your store. So, but they also have like a print on demand thing, so called Ingram Spark. So if I wanted to say self-publish a book, and if I could get it into Ingram Spark, and you wanted to order my book out there in Texas, you could go to your Barnes and Noble and say like, I'd like to order Steve Ross's book, and then they'll print it, and you could pick it up at the bookstore in about a week or two. So that's how that works.
Well, the thing about it is that with the loss of Diamond, that was a big, huge hit to indie comic book publishers. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's no other way to put it. You know, it just went. Here's one from Nero Violin. It says, "Isn't Scholastic
Okay, so
is
Scholastic
one of the bigger comic distributors? Is that true? Do they distribute comics? I mean, that's the thing that kind of Dogman. I don't think it counts as comics. Okay, it is a comic in its form, but it's not. It's more like a graphic novel, if you really want the truth, on a technical term.
Right.
You know, comic books are usually, the definition of that is, well, I guess it's kind of a loose definition. You know, are usually like monthly floppies on a regular basis, but now I guess that definition has sort of become blurred, you know, over the years.
Right. Well, so okay, so there's two things that I've been saying a long time, and I'll say it again. So back to you, Nero Violin. Scholastic is one of the biggest publishers. They do Dogman, Jeff Smith's Bone, the comic Jeff Smith's Bone, not Jeff Smith's Bone.
Captain Underpants.
Yeah, the Dave Pilkey verse, if you want to call it that. So that's Captain Underpants, Dogman, Cat Kid.
But they're by one author, Totemeyer, right? You know.
So Dave Pilkey does all the Dogman and Underpants stuff. Raina Telgemeier does Guts, Smile, Sisters. Those two won Eisner Awards. And Raina Telgemeier is like, she does girl comics, but she's really good. I mean, she is a master of the form, and she's a really nice person to the fans.
So what's the market share of those books as far as the kids market is concerned?
Massive. You could run a kids bookstore on just Scholastic, and if you selected
so why does he need Scholastic?
What do you mean?
Okay, so you're telling me this one author, okay, owns a huge market share of the kids market. Okay, right. Huge from what you've told me. Why doesn't he just say, fuck you, I'm going to do my own thing?
Because Scholastic got Dave Pilkey into every kid's book fair. They're in every supermarket.
Couldn't he do that on his own?
Walmart.
I mean, he's proven he can sell. He's proven he can sell, right? People love his stuff. I mean, he could probably just say, you know, okay, I'm done with you. Why don't I just do my own distribution, and own 100% of it?
Because his reach is so vast that, plus he also has ADD and ADHD and can't focus on the business side of things. So it's better if you just sit in a room and draw your comics.
You're absolutely right. Most creators are terrible businessmen, myself included.
I'm not kidding about the ADHD, and that's part of the appeal of those books, is because he gets it on a level, like a lot of the kids' comics are pretty cynical, where you could tell that this was like somebody's movie or cartoon idea pitch that they adapted as a graphic novel. His stuff, it's like the comic you would have done when you were 8 years old.
Well, does he own 100% of it?
He owns whatever the regular, well, as far as like whatever the rights are for a movie or merchandise.
Well, they must keep him very happy for him to stay on board, because if he was a comic book guy, he would have left, you know, the mini.
Yeah, but we've been saying this forever. Like, one of the worst things to happen to comics is that they just went to the stores, and they just like stayed in their little universe, and it was a very culty thing. And we were talking about the culty thing earlier, where like, you know, comic book people would just circle the wagons. People were jerks, but you had to tolerate the jerks, because if you were kicked out of your tribe, you were like left out in the wilderness.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I mean, there's probably a very myriad reasons why comic books abandoned the newsstand model.
Hmm.
It probably was because they just got greedy. The
No,
thing is
it
that
was because of returns.
the returns was a big,
Hmm.
huge headache.
It was the returns.
And they weren't making as much
Hmm.
on the newsstand. But you have to remember, you when comic books first appeared in the 40s, the
Hmm.
late 30s, early 40s, they were selling millions of copies. I mean, even
Yeah.
at 10 cents a book, they were still selling millions of copies. And that's another thing. I think we've forgotten that comics were meant to be disposable entertainment.
Right.
One of the things I mean, don't get me wrong, I collect comics. I love to collect comics,
Hmm.
but I think the whole collecting mentality of comics is one of the things that has been detrimental to the industry because now comics are being seen as collectibles and not as disposable entertainment.
Right.
And that's the thing that needs to change is that we need to look at comics as disposable entertainment again. We need to make it cheap, we need to make it available, and we need to make it target to readers that will come back month after month after month, to read the book.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, why even bother with monthly books? There's no need for it. Just
No.
do your trade paperback and just go to the book market, and hope for the best there, because that's really what it's come down to. I believe me, I love our comic book stores, and
Mhm.
the people who run them are hardworking individuals, but the thing about it is that you can be the hardest working comic book store owner, but if you don't have good stuff to sell, you're not going to get customers inside. It's just like you could be the best, horseshoe man in the world, but people are not bringing in their horses anymore to be shoed, and the thing is that you have to the industry itself has to fundamentally change its business model in
Mhm.
order for it to survive because the current business model ain't doing it you
Well,
know
I think the monthly is, it might work for some, because again, like I do another live stream. I do this one, and then I do the 2080 one, then I do this other one, and we review movies. And all those guys are comic book nerds, and they have their own comic book live stream and all that. But they're all 10 years young, almost to a one. They're 10 years younger than I am, and they have a completely different mindset, and and they're the ones who the comic industry now is catering to. These guys love He-Man. They did a He-Man stream where they just took apart the trailer that dropped a couple few weeks ago, and they went like shot by shot by shot through it. That thing got like 300, 400 views, like right, and they were all like pouring over, like, "Oh, I think Fisto's in that shot," blah 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 blah, and like the right now the comic book industry, like the last people who go in every month, every week, or every month or whatever, they're the older millennials. They're those guys. And so if it isn't He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, um, just name the cartoon or toy line that was popular in the mid '80s. If it isn't that, they don't care. So to to try to pick up nostalgia for like
well see
one
that
of the
you bring up another good point. Okay, another thing is that there's too much on nostalgia from an era that most people didn't grow up in. Or here's what David Schlosser says: hype comics are really killing things, and CGC too. Every cover is a special premium out now, more than 50 years. Well, I agree with you, David.
yeah.
I've always said that it's going to get to the point where why doesn't Marvel and DC just print blank comics, nothing in between covers? What they could do is they do spend huge amounts of money on a fucking ass kick-ass cover, slab it, and just have the interiors be nothing but blank
Yeah,
pages. Who was
comics
ever going to know? No one's
comics
going to
have
break it. No one's
essentially
going to
become,
crack it.
yeah,
They're
and
not going to
comics have
read it.
essentially
Why
become
don't you
trading
slab a copy?
cards.
What?
Comics have essentially become trading cards. It's like you're
They're
just
trading
collecting
cards,
the covers.
exactly.
Yeah,
Why even bother? When you slab a comic, you're not going to read it. Okay, it's
yeah,
because it's slabbed. So why even bother? So what Marvel and DC should do is just slab all their comics from now on. okay, and then and just have a really great cover on there. And then no, if I pick it up, what am I going to do? I don't know what's in the side. Am I going to crack it open to see what's inside? Highly
Mhm.
unlikely if I'm a collector, because it ruins the value of the book. It's just like buying a toy and not getting it out of a toy is meant to be played with. You don't
Right.
buy a toy and just keep it in its package. You're supposed to break it open and play with it. But
But that's
that whole
continue.
collector's mentality is one of the driving forces that I think is having a negative impact on the whole comic book industry. Don't get me wrong, I love collectors because I'm a collector myself. I like collecting
Yeah.
comics, but I'm loath to slab my books because unless I'm going to resell them. If I'm going to resell them, then I'll slab them. This
Yeah.
way, when I sell them, there's no argument as the grade.
Do
You
you have a
know.
slabbed copy of Sentai #2 somewhere?
Oh yeah, I have a pair. In fact, of course I have. I have several actually. Yeah, I'll show you one. Yeah, got two of them right here.
Hey.
Yeah, see,
So do,
gotta go
does
reverse.
our listeners want to do our viewers want to hear a story about Sentai #2 about the cover for that?
Well, maybe for another topic. Well, let's talk
The
about
person who
the
did
future.
the director of Blue Eye Samurai drew that artwork way back before she was famous.
Here's another from number 95044 says, should hobby stores include convenience items like computer pair of snacks to open up their walk-ins? Well, they could do that, sure. I
They
mean,
do.
a comic book store can sell whatever it wants, but essentially it's a comic book store. You want people to come in to buy comics. I mean, if you're going to sell Funkos, be a Funko store. Okay, if you want people to buy toys, be a toy store. There's nothing wrong with selling other things, but if you're going to be a comic book store, be a comic book store. And you have to give them a reason to sell comics. Let's see, hobby comic stores to be specific. Yes. Well, I mean, like I said, you know, but they're running a business. A comic book store is running a business, and they have to stay in business, and they'll do whatever it takes to stay in business because they got mortgage to pay, they got bills, to pay, things like that. If comics become less and less important to them, as part of their business strategy, then yeah, they're going to start carrying less and less of them, and that means that publishers will be in a bind because that means their sales are going to start to decline. So how do you stop that? How do you stop sales declines of comics? Well, you have to give people a reason to want to go to a comic book store because it's an inconvenience to go to a comic book store. Most places don't have comic book stores, and that's why the newsstand model works so well because it reached in almost every aspect of daily life. You know, almost every town or city has a drugstore or a grocery store or something else on the corner, a convenience store, and when comics are in those locations, there's a good chance that there'll be an impulse buy if the comic book is cheap enough and entertaining enough to want to justify picking it up. Now it's a comic is almost a major purchase at the moment. I mean, it's still a pretty good deal, and the good thing about it is that, with a comic book, at least you walk home with something physical that you can keep and reread and, hopefully may someday go up in value, but you shouldn't look at it that way. You should look at it as just a piece of disposable entertainment, that's one and done. And if it's a good comic, then you'll return back to it or buy the trade paperback later on down the line. So like I said, the topic here is that, you know, is the future of comic books. I don't know if people, I'm finding out that reading is not as much of a pastime that it used to be. I mean, it used to be a lot of people would spend a lot of time reading. I mean, I read. A lot of people still do read. Because reading, like I say, is fundamental. So it's just one of those things that we use to communicate. But we're getting to the point now where we may not need to read anymore. We can just pass on information, either digitally in some fashion or and
Hey,
Hey, did you finish with the bathroom break?
World's smallest kidney. So,
So I was talking about um,
oh, I
the
could hear you.
the distribution model and the fact that people are just reading less and less. It's
So,
just that even in the book market, it used to be books would sell millions of copies. Now it's 100,000 is a good seller nowadays.
oh
And
yeah,
and
500's a good seller.
it's getting to the point now where people just read on their phones or their tablets or on their computer, and that's God forbid that we have an electromagnetic pulse that engulfs the world. We may have to go
Yeah.
back to the Stone Age of reading. You know,
So everything's become very niche though too. I mean, it's not that like if you collectively took all the little before it was just kind of like one thing. A book was a book, it looked like this kind of and whatever. But now, like you said, people listen to audiobooks, they read on their phones. The kids graphic novels sell better than kids comic books. And the thing is like a lot of it to me, a lot of it has to do with the pricing. It has to do with the availability because a comic book now is like $5 or $6, right?
yeah,
So,
it's
a
no
ki-
longer an impulse purchase, that's for sure. You
well,
actually have to budget for it.
right now, there's a lot of I've talked to comic book people, and you being a publisher, we've had this discussion, and I always hear the same thing from everybody, and the bottom line from what I'm going to say is it doesn't matter, and it's the thing with the so I understand the reasons why comic books cost the way they do. And you even said like I think there was somebody asked you like why don't you just make put them on cheap paper like those what's the
Nobody does that anymore.
what's Semity's company? Uh what's the
The
name of
thing
the guy?
is, the
What's
thing
the
is,
name?
is that it was cheap back in the day because of volume. Okay, now printing technology has changed where everything is sheet fed. Okay, it
Right.
used to be. I don't know if you're familiar with printing terms, but uh, oh, here's a good one. Everybody says, "Oh man, here I used to do. I take $3, get a comic, chips, candies." Oh, those days are long over, my friend.
Yeah.
Because of inflation and the way things have gone up. Well, okay, so what I was going to say is that printing technology has changed. Back in the day, you could do huge volumes of books because of a web press.
Right.
Web press would take these huge rolls of paper, I mean, massive
Hmm.
volumes of paper, and just run continuously.
Right.
The thing because the newsprint was cheap and you kept the printing continuously all the time,
Right.
and you made uh, the more you printed, the cheaper it became. Okay,
Right.
of course. Now it's sheet fed, so you can print books as little as one. You can print one book, or you could print 10 million books.
Right.
And it would just like you said, because of that, now a comic book company or creators can now uh, do niche markets, like you said. If my book only sells 300 copies, I'll print 300 copies, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah. Well,
And
like Stephen Reed, who I worked with on Jungle Comics and for the Kyla strip, he's been doing like Kickstarters, and his fulfillment is through Kablam, and they print out a really nice looking book with heavy cardboard covers and bright white paper, and it's a beautiful package. And it's not, and he does digests. I think that digest format is it's an everybody like old timey comic book people. I'm you can't really see it, but it doesn't matter. Old timey comic book people resist it because you think of like Archie, right? You think of Archie and the few times that they tried to do like action. I have a Tarzan digest and a couple of other superhero ones that they tried to do, and they never really worked and they probably didn't work because it didn't work in the supermarket marketplace, which is probably where they thought they were going to have success. And the comic store it didn't fit the uniform floppy monthly floppy, so it didn't work there well there either. But like the I around the time around the time that Marvel went direct market, again, comic book lore time. I remember the number nine's used Kablam too. Yeah, Kablam's great and their fulfillment's awesome. So uh, I get, yeah, and they. I'm talking to number nine for a second here. Kablam sends out when
He
they
uses Kablam too.
Kablam uses
And we're
Kablam,
not being sponsored by Kablam, so don't worry about it.
yeah. So Kablam, they will do the fulfillment for Stephen Reed's White Heat comics, and they send the stuff out in this mailer that's like built like a tank. So it's maybe $1 or two more than you normally would spend on that kind of thing, but you get $1 or two more worth of service and protection in the mailing and the quality of the books. So
Well, I mean, like I said, the ability to do low runs now is available to anybody who
right,
wants to do a comic.
right,
Like I said, if you want to just do one comic, you know, you can probably get it done less than $5.
right.
So it's just the technology is there now for anybody to do comics. Like you said, we're going to see a plethora of niche comics that are aimed at a very specific audience.
Boy, you do.
As long as you think you can make a profit on it, that's going to continue to, or you just want to do it because you just want to do it.
Oh, we got a familiar
Sometimes there are
face.
creators out there who just want to see their stuff in print, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're willing to put your own money up for it. The
A
trick
familiar,
is to getting other people to pay,
yeah,
for your creation. That's the tricky part.
a
You know,
familiar set of pigtails has entered the chat. Hi, Larry.
hey Larry, Larry Higgins is in the chat.
Mhm,
He is the creator of Niobe Comics. He has a Kickstarter going right now for
mhm,
his latest Niobe book, Niobe Outbreak number 5. I think
mhm.
that's the final issue of the story arc he currently is on. So if you have a chance, I'll try to promote it if I can. If I know how to do it. I'm still
Yeah.
new at this, so I'll try to do the best I can.
Well, while you're
So,
doing you do the tech thing, and I'll rant for a little bit. Okay, so
okay.
I think the
It makes me wonder what their business strategy is. I think their business strategy is just to survive long enough to be bought by another company,
or get
or
their Netflix series or
or to get their
whatever.
Netflix series or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
their thing is,
But I think like right now, is like with the book industry and all that, there's people are reading like all kinds of things in all different ways and shapes and formats. Right now, there's this thing called Book Talk, TOK, that usually it's teenage or young women, teenage girls or young women who read like romantasy and young adult novels, and they review the books and show what they've been reading. They show their shelves and just like how like comic YouTubers have all this crap behind them. Not
Mhm.
not just you, Ben, but like almost everyone. I'm live from my closet, so I can't do that. But but anyway, so the girls will the ladies will do the book talk, and this lately the format of the books is so fancy that it's almost like a trophy. They do this designs on the sprayed edges, and there's like inlays, and they're beautiful books. The books themselves are beautiful objects. And going back to the point I was going to make, sometime in the 80s when Marvel first went to direct sales, they upgraded the paper. There was Micronauts, Kazar, and Moon Knight, and they upgraded the paper. And they took out the ads, and they tried to give you like more bang for your buck, and they charged you like extra for it. But you could only get them in the comic book store. And then like the next upgrade, and then they would experiment with formats. Like Marvel Fanfare was prestige format. Dreadstar was more of a prestige format with better paper and all that. And then when Image came along, it was just kind of like unilaterally across the whole line, everything was nice paper, best format, best everything. They spared no expense because they knew they were going to sell like 1 million copies of each title. Uh, but now we've got all these books on the newsstand, or no, not even the newsstand. All these books in the comic store. Marvel puts out like almost 100 books a month, from what I've heard. It's more
Yeah,
than 50. Because okay, again, old man talking. Remember, like when you get this, see the subscription form in the Marvel comics, and
yeah.
it was like 30 titles, and I
Hmm.
was like, man, with my allowance, I could pretty much buy every Marvel comic Marvel publishes in a month. And now,
And
like,
they all had just one singular title that you could follow.
right, it was just maybe the most popular character. Spider-Man had Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and that was it.
Here's the Niobe campaign.
Yep.
Go ahead and check it out. Support Larry Higgins. All
Yeah.
right,
25 days to go.
$25. You got $5,206. I assume that's US. I'm not sure. It could be Canadian. I don't know if that's US or Canadian. But anyway, he's very close to his goal. Let's bring him over that goal if we can.
There you go. Oh, here
Okay,
he is.
so
Hey, I'm back. He missed a shilling for him.
I shill for my friends. I don't mind doing it.
No, but I mean, he was gone, and then okay, Canadian. I have over 7,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think putting everything in the prestige format like it is now is a kind of a mistake. I don't think every book needs to be like super fancy, but I'm also think creators' egos couldn't take it if like, oh, I'm not as good as Frank Miller or Neil Gaiman or whoever, John Byrne, whoever's popular with the kids now. But I also think, and this is an ongoing thing I have at the bookstore. The current generation of kids don't know how to take care of things. Like every old man listening in now has the ability with their fingers to open a comic book that has tape on the back of it and reach in and pull out the book without getting the tape stuck to the back of their comic. There's like a maneuvering skill that we have, right? And if even if you do get stuck on the back, you know exactly how slowly to pull the tape so it doesn't rip the comic. But kids do not have that patience and they do not have that skill now. It's just kind of like, I have never
Oh,
seen,
oh, come on. To be fair, okay,
yeah.
that's always the way kids have been. Okay, I mean the
Well,
thing is
no,
that
when you're a
kids. No,
comic,
no,
when you're,
no. I'm not. No, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on this. Okay, you know, kids are kids. Okay, they have no sense of ownership. Okay,
yeah,
when they're young. Okay,
hmm,
to them everything's provided for them. They don't have to worry about well, for the most part, most kids, if they're brought up in a fairly well-to-do family or a middle-class family, they don't have to worry about food, shelter, or anything else. Anything they get is just given to them. You know, it's the first book that they get on with their own money that they start to take care of things.
hmm,
Okay, that's the thing is that I can understand kids being less than cautious with their stuff that they have because there's no sense of ownership. Okay, the
well,
thing is that when you start collecting comics with your own money, and you and I know this.
hmm,
Okay, so when we bought our first comic with our own money, oh boy, did we take care of that
hell yeah, we
comic.
did. We reread it like a
We
thousand
read it a
times.
million times,
Hmm,
but we always took care of it because we wanted to be, before I became a collector of comics.
hmm,
Okay, I was a reader of comics, and I didn't really think much about keeping my comics in really that good a condition because I wanted to read them. That was the
right,
whole point of the comics, is to
yeah.
read them. It never occurred to me until I discovered, the comic book price guide, and it says, "Oh, where have you been all my life?" You know, and then that's what I discovered. Holy crap! Back when I bought my first comic book price guide back in like '76. Okay,
So how old were you?
77,
Well,
and I said, "Holy crap! This thing is the size of a Bible." Okay,
hmm,
and I was spent hours looking at every single comic book and all the photos that were in there. Here's another from American Discord. Let's see what he has to say. We've entered the blue tape generation. Most shops down here have moved to painter's tape because
yeah.
what is that all about?
Yeah, because it's not as sticky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more like a Post-it. It's
Well,
more
now
like
they
a
have
Post-it sticky.
bags with tape that's already built in,
Yeah, but
so
those
now
are
you don't have to
still
worry
too
about that
sticky. They'll
anymore.
they'll
Oh,
damage.
Niobe's back, he says, so all that has changed. No one uses the price guide. Yes, that is so sadly true.
Right.
The thing about it is that I think that and eBay is the price guide. Yes, eBay is the price guide, but I see, unfortunately, I think eBay has been detrimental to the overall comic book landscape, because it used to be that we could sort of agree on a set price on things. Now, like Niobe Larry says, it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just here and there. One guy could sell a book for $1, and then another guy can sell it for $100. Same
Well,
book, you know.
there's
And it's
people
like,
actually
so which
selling.
is it? And the thing about eBay is that the difference is that when you used to go to a comic book store, you found a comic you wanted, you would look at it, you would just you take care, you would see it, look, look, there's a little tiny scratch there,
Mhm.
and then if it was like $10, you would go to the dealer and say, would you take this, he would say, this thing's got a little defect here, it's got some thing here, and it's like, would you take 8 for it? People used to negotiate back then.
Well,
The
I
art of
think there's
negotiation is what made comic collecting, such a great hobby, because this way you were interacting with other collectors. Now it's like, oh, eBay, click, bought.
yeah. Well, to me, collecting and reading are two. They belong in the same ecoverse, but they're two different things. So any discussion about value and collecting and prices and all that, I'm not as interested in it. I understand it. I think there's a nice midpoint because, like, when I was a kid, I almost all my comics. The first comics I ever bought were my grandfather used to give us a dollar like every time we'd go visit. So I was able to buy 4 comics with that dollar.
Darker Half says, well, eBay is the last resort for buying comics because they really gouge you a postage. Well, it
That's
may be
true
the last
too.
resort to buying comics, but it's the first resort to pricing them. It seems like and this is what I can't stand. I'll go to a comic book convention, I'll see a collector, and our dealer, and I use collectors loose. I say dealer, okay, and because he may not be a collector, he may be a dealer. So anyway, I find a comic, and if they have no price on them, I usually just
Mhm.
pass them up, because I insist they have a price on there.
Because if you
Because
have to ask, you
if
can't
the minute
afford
they
it.
pull out their phone to look up a price on a comic book, I've lost
Oh,
my business.
yeah.
Okay, but that's me. That's just me. But if you don't have a price on your comic, you don't got my business. You know.
So
When
as we speak, Ben, there's somebody on eBay asking 20.99 for "You're the Hunter of the Future" #1. Oh
eBay
wait,
is
no, no,
half
no,
the
that's the
reason.
trade paperback. Someone else is at #4. They want 15.99.
Well,
Uh,
the
somebody
difference
wants
is,
$55 for your #1. So I mean, that's insane. I mean, I got all the copies you can eat.
well, look, it's all
That's
about
there.
supply and demand. The thing is, and plus, people, you can price anything you want at any price. The key is whether you're going to sell it.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Get this. Somebody wants $100.98 for the Fred Perry variant.
Whatever.
I got like 5 of those.
I'm not seeing any of that money,
I'll
so it doesn't
I'll
matter to
sell it
me.
to you for
Okay, so
half of that.
hey, I just sold it for cover price. Oh, dumb me. Oh
I
shit.
know.
I'm such an idiot. Okay, so let's see. Well, yeah, it's eBay's a great place to make money selling
Mhm,
comics that are going to that are brand new, things like that. That's fine. I mean, you're not gouging people, for whatever reason. I mean, say FOMO price, fear of missing
yeah,
out pricing.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That is true for a lot for people. Let's see.
right,
David Schlar says the antiques bookstore I help price comics still uses the price guide. The owner's trying to stay relevant for today. It's hard to walk ins these days with buying online. Yes,
mhm.
sadly, that is true.
Well, that's us too. I mean, we're direct the
Yeah, I
place
mean,
I work at is
it's a
still
double edged sword.
yeah,
It does allow people who do want to buy something to get it very conveniently. But the
mhm,
thing is you don't know whether or not you're paying a fair price for it or not. See, that's
yeah,
the key. You know how much you're willing to pay for it.
mhm,
But but you don't. You always have the in the back of your mind says, "Am I getting a fair price on this?" And the thing is, you're not unless they have really good pictures of the comic. You don't know what kind of condition it's in. You could end up with the comic and there's a coupon missing. You know,
Mhm.
there was a tear that wasn't in the photo. You know, I didn't see that. You know,
Well, I mean,
that
that's why they
bin.
rate. That's why you rate the seller too.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
now Steve is always looking. Also look at shipping, and that adds to the price. Yes, that is true. It does
yeah.
add to the price.
I mean,
And tax. They add tax now. You know,
yeah,
for your purchase.
well,
When
I
you go
mean,
to
my
collectors expo, it's sort of built in.
but my point is that even if that was like the sum total of the price, that's insane
So
for
list
that.
it, sell it for lower. I out flipper all day. Well, good for you, Larry. Uh, that's good for you. You show them. So,
Yeah,
like if I was AP, would have AP. Yeah, we do have a sort of an eBay store, but the problem is that we don't have anybody to run it. You know, because
yeah.
we're so busy doing our producing comics that it's hard to find someone to actually sell them.
You know what? I was going to tell Joe
Because
that
only
that's.
worth was. Yep, that's true. That is so true. That's what I just said.
I was
You
going to tell
know,
Joe that was your number one problem is that you have too many
yeah.
creatives and not enough workers.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're sort of a catch-22. We want to hire more people.
Hmm.
The trouble is, we're not making enough to do that. So the people we do have, we have to double. I would love to do all that kind of stuff, but I have to. My time is, of course, I'm spending time on the streamline, but this is sort of like a way to promote and to promote AP. So hopefully, we get some new readers to check out Antarctic Press Comics and see why we've been around for 41 years.
Hmm.
And so but the thing about it is that there has to be a fundamental change of attitude. First of all, we need to start producing material. You know why manga is kicking Western comics ass? Because they're giving young people something they want to read.
Yes.
Okay, young people don't want to have to deal with 80 years of continuity.
Right.
Yeah, if Marvel and DC were really creative, they would create new characters just for them. I remember when I was growing up, and I'm sure you remember too. Marvel would always introduce at least one new character a year, at least one. Okay, some
Yeah.
of them would hit, some of them wouldn't.
Yeah.
But look, characters like Bullseye was just a villain in Daredevil. Now he's huge, because the
Mhm.
readers wanted more Bullseye. Same with Deadpool, same with Moon Knight, same with all those characters. What was the last new character Marvel had that was a huge breakout hit? Ms. Marvel. I mean,
Well, I mean, that's
and
a
not even
whole.
even Miss Marvel is not her own character. She took the name of
Yes.
somebody who's already established.
Right.
If they had named her Stretchy Girl, okay, and she became her own thing, she could have maybe resonated with younger people. She says, "Oh boy, I love Stretchy Girl." Okay, she's my character.
Right.
Okay, she's my character. I want to grow up with Miss Marvel. Who the hell? Who's Miss Marvel? You know.
Okay. So first of all, if you've seen the Raina Telgemeier books, the Smile and the ones that are like marketed to girls, there's nothing about Ms. Marvel. There's a very little bit of Ms. Marvel that would appeal to that audience. Marvel's trying to make like apples and oranges into the same salad, and they're not. It can work. If you get and the more you try to put into it, the smaller the audience is going to be.
That's why you'd be a worker. Well, yeah, but you'd have to get a green card to work here. Well, actually, you could probably work remote. Actually,
Yeah. Well, Larry,
nowadays you can work
Larry,
remote.
Ben's been trying to get me over to Texas for I don't know how long.
I'm still working on that.
Yeah,
Someday,
yeah.
someday, when we're 80
When I
years
was there
old.
for the
Oh,
40th,
finally, Steve, you got your ass over here in Texas. It's about
well,
time. After
you know,
California's fallen into the ocean.
Ben cracked the whip while I was over there for the 40th. So, but
Yeah, now it says remote. Ooh, it's a 2026 generation. It says remote. Oh yeah,
yeah, well,
nowadays.
we can't. The problem is we can't. I can't pack boxes by remote. So,
Well, also, I'll tell you a little story. Okay. When if you have to leave, Steve, just let me know. Okay. And I'll end the cast. I
I'll
know
just
you got
pause
other
it and
things
go
today.
go to the bed. Hey, Blade
Let me tell you a
Man.
story. Let me tell you a
Hey,
story
this
about
is one of our
Blade Man.
guys. Another one of our guys.
When back in the late 80s, early 90s, before people wrote remote, you actually had to physically be there.
Yeah.
When people were showing their portfolios, guess where they had to show their portfolios? At a convention.
Right.
Okay. Or you made photocopies and you sent them off, or you would actually send original art to Marvel and DC. They wouldn't guarantee to return the art, but at least they would get it. So now they don't do that anymore. Okay,
Right.
now they do everything by remote and everything. But the thing is, the beauty of seeing somebody in person is that you know who that person is. You get to
Right.
know them. And when Fred Perry first came, I wrote to him and said, "Hey, would you like to come visit us in our office?" And he said, "Yeah." So I got him an airline ticket, flew him to San Antonio, and we met, and he stayed with us, and he produced comics for us while he was here. So we were creating our own story. Same with people like Robert DeZeus, Ted Nomura. All those people stayed with us because we had a house, we had plenty of room, So we just said, here's your room, start making comics for us, and
Now,
that's
wait a minute. My comic story appeared in the same Ninja High School yearbook that Fred Perry's artwork debuted in. You didn't send me over there to live in your house.
I offered. You said no. Yes, I appreciate you relive my job now as being in new viewers. Oh, cool. That's
Yeah.
great news.
And
New characters are hard to sell.
wait. And furthermore,
Okay. Actually, Nero Violin brings up a very good point. Okay, recently, there was a kerfuffle with Todd McFarlane where he said that with a great artist, I don't need a great writer. I can sell the book with a great artist. He is true to some extent, but I wholly disagree with the sentiment. Okay. And Nero Violin brings up new characters are hard to sell. Yes, new characters are hard to sell, but the thing is, if you do a good character, people will resonate with it. Sometimes it takes a while, and if you can create a new character that people like, okay, let me ask you this. Okay, 1976, if I were to say the name Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, and you had no idea, they said that there's a movie called Star Wars coming out, in 1976, you had no idea what we're talking about, none whatsoever. Okay, and as far as you were concerned, it was just vapor, nothing. Okay, so and George Lucas, took the chance with his own original characters that it was going to resonate. He didn't know it was going to fail. In fact, he thought it was going to fail. Okay, he thought it was going to be a total. The studio had no faith in it. Okay, George Lucas nearly killed him. Okay, and he didn't even he wasn't even there for the opening premiere. He was out in Hawaii with Steven Spielberg talking about Indiana Jones. Okay, so he thought it was going to flop, and he didn't want to be there when it did. Okay, well, what happened? It became a huge success. The thing is, you don't know whether it's going to be a success. All you have is your own belief in the character. Okay,
Right.
you have your own belief in what you're doing. Okay, if you have no faith in your character, then why should other people have faith in your character? People are not stupid. Okay, comic readers are not stupid. Okay, if you haven't put any thought or care in a new character, they can read that from a mile away. Okay, they know. Okay, this character is a nothing character. Okay,
Right.
why do you think characters like Miss Marvel and all those haven't are flopped? Everyone knows they're not real characters. Okay, there was no thought put behind it. It was all just a political maneuver, in in hopes that they were pushing a character on you. They weren't creating a character. Okay.
So let's go back to the manga thing. Yeah, Larry's going to be.
What I say is, this also circles back to the cult-like culture comics. We tend to wagons going. That's not a character. That's not character. Huh? What do you think he means by that?
So here's the thing too. Marvel tried to.
That's true.
Yeah. So Marvel tried to rebrand a bunch of their older characters. it was Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl, the Korean Hulk, um, even Captain Marvel. You know, they tried to rebrand Captain Marvel, and none of them really worked that well. Meanwhile, in Japan, they've got if without even seeing a picture of the character, if you told me there was going to be a comic coming out called Chainsaw Man, I'd have to know what that's going to be and what it's going to look like. And if you told me there was a character called One Punch Man, I want to know what that's about and I want to see what that character looks like. Just just the names alone are evocative enough that it sounds exciting. It sounds like the kind of thing I wanted to read when I was 12 years old. There's nothing about Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl that an 8-year-old girl is going to care about.
Yes, and you bring up a good point. Okay, so in manga, okay, if you notice,
Mhm.
they have a cycle, a 10-year cycle. Okay,
Mhm.
what happens is that, when a kid reaches reading age for comics, let's
Mhm.
say 9, 10, 11 years old, okay, maybe earlier, maybe later. Let's say average about 8 or 9. Okay, they discover a comic, okay, that's specifically created for them.
Right.
Okay, and they love it. They grow up with it. So for the next 10 years, they grow up with that character. And
Mhm.
then they move on. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, next year's characters are being developed for the next generation. And they're going to
Mhm.
grow up with new characters and things like that. So if you notice in manga, there's no longevity of comics with a few exceptions, maybe One Piece, Dragon Ball. Those are all characters that, usually have gone way beyond the 10-year cycle.
Right.
But the thing is that the Japanese manga publishers know they have to constantly recircle and refresh their
Mhm.
reader base. Okay, while we're stuck with just maintaining the reader base of people who've read the same characters 30 years ago, 40
Okay,
years
so
ago.
that's exactly true about what happened with 2000 AD. Like it came out in 1977 to cash in on Star Wars. They didn't even know what Star Wars was going to be. They said, "Oh, yeah, why don't you just since Larry is pretty chatty, why don't you just put him on screen?" No, 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 not actually Larry. Put his words on screen because like otherwise we're just going to be reading Larry's chats all
Well, how do you do that? How do you put him on screen?
like you're doing now.
Oh, I'm
This
doing that.
Yeah, so
Duh.
we don't have to read it out loud because it's gonna be like
Okay.
the Larry show. So
He has
Larry's got his
definitely
own
a lot
damn
of
show.
opinions.
We appreciate him being here.
Okay,
Anyway,
he brings up a good point. They're still pushing these new characters. Well, I would probably I don't really have seen a new character. I mean, I think the last attempt that Marvel, the one I remember is the New Warriors. Remember that debacle?
oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and they were. I think they should just released it. Let the market decide whether or not those characters would have taken off or not. But these a bunch of
No,
chicken
they
shits. They
would
didn't.
that would have been if that had crashed publicly, if that had become like
Yeah, it
a
would have
news
been an
item
embarrassment
crashed
for them, wouldn't it,
publicly,
man? But
yeah,
no, the thing about it, sometimes characters that turn out at first to be embarrassments actually turn out to be really popular later on. That's another thing. Okay, I watch these comic book channels, and I shouldn't be, but I do. There is these, I forgot their names, but there's two guys that what's wrong with the comic book industry, and they say that the problem is that they're badly written, bad characters that are poorly written.
mhm,
And I say there's no such thing as a bad character. Okay,
mhm,
only badly written characters. Okay,
mhm,
if I if you take a character like, okay, let's say you take a character, for instance, like for a long time, Daredevil was sort of like a joke character. Okay,
mhm,
right? He wasn't really taking that seriously.
mhm.
Okay, but along comes Frank Miller, and what does he do? He totally changes the character into something cool and kick ass. You
Well, look at
know,
what happened to She-Hulk too. I mean, that was that
yes, she
original
perfect example.
yeah, and they leaned into the joke, and that was very successful. No,
That's the thing.
no, Larry, we
In
love
the
she.
hands of a good writer, a bad
We're giving
character
you a
can
hard
be a
time,
good
Larry.
character.
Come on.
Okay, I mean that's just that's not What? Oh, you want pre-record? Larry, you need a spell checker.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I think Miss Marvel was a fine character. Crack character. It's a fun read until you do it into. Well, see, that's the thing. Okay,
So
if she was such a good character, why didn't they just give her own name? Why did she have to be called Miss Marvel? Miss Marvel was already established. Okay, we know who Miss Marvel is. Okay, just same with Miles Morales. Okay, now when people just call him Miles Morales, they don't call him Spider-Man because we know who Spider-Man is. But originally he was supposed to take the mantle of Spider-Man, but nobody refers to him as Spider-Man. They refer to him as Miles Morales. So just call him Miles Morales.
he
The thing is that if he had debuted as Miles Morales, do you think he would have gotten the popularity he has now? Highly doubtful. I mean, it's possible that he could have taken off, but if you hadn't attached that Spider-Man name to it, I highly doubt anybody would remember that character.
I think they called him something else. Like how the one that's based on who's the Gwen Stacy. There's like there's like Ghost Spider now. They don't call her.
Please don't type in anger. I'll try not to type in anger.
So anyway, the where was I going?
Well, I don't disagree with politics in comics. That's for sure. I mean, you can have your politics, just be smart about it. I mean, and certainly, let your books speak for itself. If you want to, fly your flag in the pages of a comic book, you're more than welcome to do that. But let the market decide if they agree with you or not. And that's the thing. And for the God's sakes, don't ever insult or attack your readers, because of politics. That is like the worst thing you can do in the world.
Well,
but
what some people are trying to do is get the people that they don't want to read their comics out, so they won't be offended. It's like they lose half their audience, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I've only got half the audience, but that half isn't offended by what I'm
Spider
saying."
Gwen. Oh
Yeah.
If they've got to the point now where they're just like creating a Spider-Man family like Superman, I mean, how moral, how culturally, not culturally, how morally, not moral. I'm trying to find the right words. How creatively bankrupt must you be, okay, to resort to that. Okay, well, it also could be that maybe creators just not giving their best new characters anyway because they're never going to own it. So that's a big issue too. Is that I'm superstar writer B, and and I'm not going to give Marvel my best character. Hell no, because I'm never going to own it. And that's another thing that needs to change. Okay, the big two need to start, giving out a little bit and sharing, some of the profits. But the official name is Ghost Spider.
Yeah.
But Ghost Spider. Why don't we just call Wolver Spider?
But I think I think Miles Morales Spider-Man is called something else now. Like he's got an official superhero name.
But yes, he shouldn't need her own name. Yeah, I mean, look, what are you afraid of? Okay, you're afraid that she's not going to take off. If she's a good character, she'll take off. Give her own name. Drop the Miss Marvel, give Miss Marvel back to Miss Marvel, and have Kamala Khan just come out as Kamala Khan. I mean, everyone knows her identity anyway. I don't know why she wears that freaking mask. There's no point in it.
So Ben, the Ms. Marvel was actually created during that era when they were trying to trademark all the female character names. So she was like, it was like Spider-Woman, She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel. So they're probably holding on to it just to hold on to the trademark.
Well, yeah, duh. I mean, that's just the way it is. There's money in them trademarks.
Yeah.
Laugh out, disagree all you want. The fact the world is divided. Well, that's true. I mean, yes, not everyone's ever going to, but you know what? We can still get along. And there's no reason why, we have to resort to calling people names. I could get to know you, and we may disagree politically or religiously. I don't know, for whatever reason. Unless my personal philosophy has been that, do whatever you want, just harm nobody. Okay, I don't care what you do, just don't harm anybody.
Tell me what the politics of Dogman are. Tell me what the politics.
I don't know. I don't read Dogman. I assume it's a goofy dog characters does crazy kid things.
Wait, Ben, do you know the story of Dogman? Do you know what the character is?
All I know is that it's some ridiculous story about a police guy and a dog, and they get killed in some explosion, and they have to $6 million man him together, and a Frankenstein him together, and that's how he became Dog Man,
Yeah,
and
good
I
enough.
mean
I'm impressed. All
that
right.
that that as far as I know, that's fine. Kids go for that. That's great. I mean, it's for kids. It's not for me.
Yeah,
And that's great. Kids. If kids anything to get kids reading comics is okay in my book.
right.
If they when they get older and they want to start getting to something a little bit more mature, a little bit more of their age group, then great. That's what we need.
Well,
That's
what
what we
we
need is kids who grow up with reading comics so they'll continue to grow up to read comics,
right,
and they'll find new and better. And our job is to provide that entertainment to that stage of growth, that they're in, so that they can say, "Oh my gosh, I remember that book." I have people come up to me who are 50 years old who said they read Ninja High School. 50-year-old people.
yeah,
Said, "Oh yeah, I remember reading Ninja High School." And I would say, so if you're 50, you read Ninja High School when you were 10.
yeah.
Okay.
Which is
So they
possible.
grew up with it. And the thing about Ninja High School is that I always try to change it up every 10 years. My feeling is that if I change it up every 10 years, it remains fresh. And then new readers who come on board will grow up with that version of Ninja High School, just like the people who grew up with Phantom Menace, the prequel trilogies, and just like the people who grew up with the sequel trilogies, despite its flaws, there are going to be people who are going to remember the sequel trilogy when they get who watched it at 15, who are going to grow up 25 and says, I remember the sequel trilogy. I, thought was really great, So, but that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, and it, I never understood why people who have no idea what they're talking about seem to feel they're qualified to judge other people's work. Okay. And that if you everyone's entitled to their opinion. So changing the established character for politics has been a big thing, maybe dropped by Marvel and DC. At least in truth, yeah. I mean, yes, buy independent. You must buy
Mhm.
independent. Let's see what.
Yeah. But so
Oh,
my
more
point is
nightly.
that the most popular Larry's like, oh well, AP doesn't do comics like Dogman. It's like, no, but
Exploiting regular people for popularity and money. Well, that's just been the way it is. It's at the beginning of time.
yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Does AP Comics like Dogman? No, they don't. I may not
uh,
personally care much for it. I don't dislike it, but boy, do I love the sales. I would sure like that.
Hey Larry, have you seen the Dog Supreme comic yet, buddy?
It's always was, but nothing extreme like these days. It'll eventually tone down. Yeah, things go in cycles.
I My point is that the most popular things with the kid I think we should be focusing on the kids because they're going to be the future comic book
I
readers,
think you should
collectors,
focus on
whatever.
everyone. Okay, the thing is that there's all levels of see that it used to be Marvel and DC did that. Okay, they had
Yes.
comics for kids, they had comics for adults, they had comics for middle schoolers, they had comics for high schoolers, and so they had romance comics, they had Western comics, they had war comics, they had monster comics, they had kitty comics, and it was for everyone. The thing about it was that they got greedy. They went to the direct market, they abandoned newsstand. They focused only on collector market. And they didn't care about trying to maintain a steady generational readership. I mean, both of them were guilty of that.
Well, so
And
I was going to say what happened with 2000 AD is exactly what you were talking about. There was like that reboot there's a reboot when it's kind of like, okay, now we know that the kids who started reading this 5 years ago
yeah,
are out. They're out dating and they've lost interest in comics. So now we're going to get the kind of do a soft reboot.
says
It's
X-Men comics gear more adults. Yes, so that's true. We do. But the thing is, we have tried to do younger reader books. I mean, like I said, Mighty Tiny is geared at a younger readership. And Doc
Dogs
Supreme is
Supreme.
definitely geared at a younger readership. Fur Force is definitely geared at a younger readership. You
Except
know,
for the Satanism, Ben.
huh?
Except for the Satanism.
Well, it's never too early to introduce you to the dark
Holy
prince of
crap,
hell,
man.
right? So, uh, but the thing about it is that we have to, if we have to depend on creators to do that, then yeah, I mean we have to wait till somebody submits at the end. Then that brings up to another point. Is the my point is you want kids to buy, but we don't offer them anything. Well, let's try to change that if we can.
So here's what happens. Like when I was I don't know about your world, Larry, but when I was a kid reading comics in the 70s and 80s, they were mostly written by a lot of them were written by boomers who didn't care if kids were reading the comics, but they did stay within the parameters of language, nudity, excessive violence. But they were such good storytellers that they could tell a PG or maybe even an R-rated story in a way that was not like if you were just flipping through the comic, you didn't know like, oh, this is like you didn't know that Power Man and Iron Fist was like a black exploitation movie until you sat down and read it. I mean, it's like, okay, there's a black character and there's some of the
Not
tropes.
only a black exploitation, but a martial arts movie.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
both all of those movies were R-rated movies, but they passed the comic code.
Except Iron Fist was not Asian.
Well, there's
He
that
was a
too.
cracker.
That well, I mean, neither was the American Ninja, but there you go.
There you go, right? That's
So,
whitewashing. I'm offended.
well, so Shang-Chi was Asian though.
Yes.
So,
And of course, he was I won't use the word stereotypical, but, he definitely had a very Asian, yellow peril feel to it.
oh, he was definitely yeah. You don't have to say stereotype, but he definitely had carried the
Yeah, but it
trope.
was the 70s. I mean, I can excuse that. You have to take it in context,
Right.
so,
So,
so
but my point is, like all those Marvel books, and all the 2000, the major 2000 AD characters, those were aimed at like somewhere between 7 and maybe 10 or 11 years old, right?
right.
And that was kind of like the golden age of when we were reading. I read my like I really got into Star Wars. I mean, I really got into Marvel because of Star Wars and Micronauts. So I was probably like 8, 9, 10 years old,
Yeah.
when I was reading.
My
And
thoughts, AP needs younger people in the ranks making choices. Well, we look to have younger people in our ranks. A lot of creators who are sending stuff in. I don't know the ages. I never ask. All I know is that, I we just, the thing about it is when I get a submission from somebody, I don't ask what their political orientation is. I don't ask what their religious orientation is. I don't ask what their age, though I should because, I don't want to be hiring somebody that isn't proper age, because when I send them, I don't want to, because they're working, so I don't, because we need your social security number and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, uh, I usually don't ask their age. I assume that they're old enough to sign a contract and things like that.
mhm,
I don't ask their gender. I don't ask their sexual orientation. I only look at the submission. It's the only thing I look at. If it's a submission I like, then I'll contact them and say, hey, we want to publish this. We'll send you a contract, and things like that. So, I don't know, how young, because without seeing them, I don't know. That's another beauty of going able to meet people in person
right.
is that you know who they are. You know,
Okay,
but
so
like I said, it's just one of those things you just have to deal with. Well, you can't take.
Larry, I've worked in a bookstore for 35 years, and more than 20 of those years has been exclusively in the children's department. I know what books and comics for younger readers look like. I'm good, bro. I'm good. And Ben's wife has been a school teacher for how long?
Yeah, for 25 years at
Yeah, so
least.
he could bring home stuff home from the office and show it to her. And I work with Zoomers. Most of my coworkers are Zoomers, and I brought AP stuff to them and said, "What do you think would be the most appealing?" They're publishing the Saint Sophia book as a result of me showing them on my iPad at work and saying, like, "Do you think this would pass as a romantasy comic?" So we're working on it. He's got people, he's got resources, but the industry as a whole is a difficult nut to crack because going way back to what I was trying to say an hour ago is that the $5-6 comic book or a $10 Kickstarter book that's like 22 pages long is not a good value or a good risk of entertainment for a kid. Kids' allowances, I mean, I used to get like $3 to $5 when I was a kid. Assuming you were talking about a upper middle class family, they're probably up to like $20
Yeah,
now.
they probably get it like a debit card, and their dad or their
You're
family,
probably not
they just
wrong.
get them charged.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
I transferred money into your debit card, son. So now because nobody. I actually went to a couple of places that don't take cash, and I was like, "What? You don't take
yeah,
cash?" It's like
that's
everyone
a
takes
COVID.
cash. And he said, "Well, we
No,
don't take cash." And it's
it's
like,
a COVID thing. They
I,
weren't
I
taking
like
stuff
I
you
was
witnessed.
at a place at a parking lot, and then we went to a movie. I mean, like a theater, and neither one of them took cash. You
That's
know,
so the Illuminati can track your spending.
so Naiwo says if we didn't worry about the collector's market, then comics are dead. If only ran one cover on the, well, I mean, he is right more or less as far as Western comics are concerned. Certainly not that way in manga. The thing is about
Right,
manga is that manga is selling because people want to read manga, not because they want to collect manga.
right. But it,
And that's to me is, and that may be true, for the most part, and that needs to change. You see, that needs to change. We need to get people out of that collector's mentality and
right,
back into the reading mentality.
right. Like I was saying, there's comics for entertainment, and then there's comics for collectors, and
Oh, I mean, well, yes, we are. Unfortunately, we are. Well, not for unfortunately. That's a very poor choice of words.
mhm,
The way we have it handled is we have, uh, three editors, that decide if a book is published or not. Now, if it doesn't have to be it can be a super majority, or I can just simply put my foot down and say, we're doing this book. I don't care what you say, because I have that much seniority. But usually we try to. I like to get different opinions on something before I dive into committing to a book or a series. Or if I meet you and I like you, then you have a pretty good chance of getting your book, past the editorial staff. I'll just be honest with you on that. But if you're, somebody that, we may not get along entirely, it may be a little bit more difficult. But I've been wrong before. That's why I like to have a 3-tier system. And, like Steve is one of the editors. He actually gives me good advice on whether a book will sell or not. And if he thinks it'll sell and I don't, but he feels strongly about it, I will acquiesce and say, yeah, okay, let's take a chance on this book and see how it does. And because I'm not, I'm not so stubborn as to let my own ego get in the way if somebody thinks this book will make AP money.
yeah,
And yet the needle hasn't been moved. Well, that is unfortunately true. Because Kickstarters are not for kids. And yes, that's also true. Kickstarter is another thing that's definitely changing, the landscape. Now a lot of publishers, big publishers, are going to Kickstarter. It used to be that was for the realm of people who didn't have money. I think people have lost sight of the original reason Kickstarter, just like YouTube. YouTube
right.
was originally for people to do cat videos and stuff like that. Now it's become this huge multi-billion-dollar industry, and I'm participating in it. So, but it does allow people like me and you to share our thoughts, in a public forum. And the same with the Kickstarter. Kickstarter was originally meant to fund creators who didn't have money to get their dreams off the ground. Now it's expected that you already have everything paid for and created and done, before anyone will commit any money to you. Because chances are the reason that is because too many creators did not fulfill their campaigns, and too many of them got to the point where it was becoming dangerously detrimental to the whole idea of crowdfunding.
Yeah, amen to
So,
that, brother.
mhm.
I backed a few of those campaigns.
I definitely agree with you that Marvel and DC are out of touch. Well, they can afford to be out of touch. Like
Right.
back in when they were before they were bought by huge corporations, they actually competed with each other and who could do the better comics. I mean,
Hmm.
they really, really did. They would creators would switch sides all the time. Editors would compete who could do the better books. Now they don't give a shit, because why should they? Okay, they're owned by Warner Brothers and Disney, multi-billion-dollar corporations. Marvel and DC are chump change to them. Okay, they only keep it. I don't know why they keep it, to be honest. I don't know what the thought process is at their corporate headquarters. Is, why are we still publishing comics and doing these comics for Marvel and DC? It just seems to me like a drain on our resources. It could be they consider it advertising. My thought is that the only reason they do comics is advertising. It's just part of their advertising campaign to keep the trademark fresh, so that nobody can infringe on their trademarks, because they have to do it. Otherwise they lose the trademark, and because they don't care. They honestly, they do not care. They could put out toilet paper and people would still buy it, or maybe they don't buy it and they don't care. And like I said, the slab idea, perfect idea. You get rid of the writer, get rid of the artist, just hire a great cover artist, slab the damn thing, send it out that way, charge $29.99, people will buy it.
Well, they're hoping that they're going to stumble across another, whatever the next big thing is for kids. And
I wish AP had webcomics people hitting them up for publishing. I mean, I would love that. In fact, that's one of the things we would definitely. The thing about webcomics is they're formatted differently, and so it would take some effort to reformat webcomics into a proper comic book format.
Well, Webtoons has they do books now.
Oh, do they? Well, that's interesting.
They take the webtoons and reformat them as graphic novels.
Well, they're always welcome to submit their book to us. I will take the time out of the day. I look at every single submission and I write back to every single creator. I don't ghost them. So if you send a submission to AP, I promise you someone will look at it and reply. Say, well, I leave you, Ben, but there's a lot here I disagree with, and we'll cover it tonight live. Well, Larry, that's what I love about you. We can agree to disagree, and I still love you, Ben. You're still my brother. So, you'd give your thoughts about it, and someday we'll get together and we'll have a drink. All right? See. Plus, lots of people in Asia are casual artists, and manga be competitive. Oh, yeah. It's 99.9% of the manga that are being published, you don't ever see. You're only seeing the 1% cream of the crop,
when it hits big, it hits really big.
Oh yeah, when it hits big, it hits big. The thing about it is that people vote on the manga. The actual readers vote on what's popular. The editor doesn't decide. He decides what goes in. Okay, but it's the readers who decide what stays. That's very, very, and that's used to be the way in comic books here in the States. Fan letters was a good indicator of whether a book was popular. Of course, sales help too. But fan letters were really a good indicator of whether a character or a comic book was popular. Doujinshi is huge, but people in North America making indie books is rare. Yeah, because of trademark and copyright. In Doujinshi, there's in Japan, there's sort of an unwritten rule by bigger publishers that they allow fans, casual fan, they're called fan circles, basically, and they're allowed to do their own fanzines of trademarked and copyrighted characters, as long as it doesn't get too big. There's a certain amount of books that is allowable before it becomes an issue. And there's an understanding between fans and the publishers that you're not supposed to cross that line.
So we have something like that here, but it's mostly written word. It's not so much comics. Have you ever heard of a website called Archive of Our Own?
Never heard of it. Now I'm curious.
That's where the fan fiction goes, and it has. If you look at the numbers of readers and participants and everything, it is as much a social network site as it is a place to read fan fiction. And
I think I've seen that because I was seeing some Warrior Nun fan fiction, and there's actually quite a bit of it out there. I'm surprised, to be honest.
But it's not. It's the Netflix Warrior Nun, not so much yours.
The Netflix Warrior Nun. Yes, that is correct. So working in manga is voluntary enslavement. Well, I don't know how will you be voluntarily enslaved. I was like, I want to be a slave. Can I be a slave today? Yes, I volunteer to be a slave. It's
I'm a
hell, but they
slave.
know what they're getting into. Yes, they know what they're getting, but the hopes that they're gonna pray big. But the thing is that at least it's an opportunity. You may not make it, but I tell you what, at least they're trying to get their stuff out there. If you have a great idea in your head and it stays in your head, what good is it?
Mm-hmm.
What good is it? It's nothing. It's useless. Okay. But at least you're going out there and putting your stuff on paper and putting it out in the public in hopes that it's going to be the next big IP. But unless you actually sit down and do it, and yes, it's going to take work. You know, that's the curse that humans have, is that we have to produce things to be useful. If you wanted to be in the like in Wally, just a blob going around in a hover chair, then okay, that's what, if you're happy with that. But to me, I'd like to create things, you know. Sure. All in love. Yes, I love you too, Larry. Larry, you take care. My job is yes, I love you, but purely platonically, of course.
Yes, not in a biblical sense, Larry.
Absolutely. Not so. There's a heap of them, not just in the US, but the UK and Australia, doing what they can to get their comic out, trying to make it. Yeah, that's great. That's always been that way. Okay, the thing is now the opportunities are better than they were back when Steve and I were growing up. There was gatekeepers. Okay, the thing is, we didn't have the internet. Back in the 80s, there was a semblance of an internet back then. I remember CompuServe, and I remember when AOL first came along, and it was like the big thing, but there was no internet for us to exchange ideas or to promote anything, but now there's lots of opportunities for people to get their ideas out there. The trick is getting eyeballs on them. See,
Right.
with so much competition out there now and so many different things trying to vie for your attention, it's very easy to get lost, in all that product, that makes yours stand out. So you have to have something really, really, you have to have something really, really original and new and different to get people to want to take notice of it. And when it does take people to, then it's up to you to share it. If you like something, don't sit on it, share it, to as many people as you possibly can. Make it go viral, as they say, as the young people say. Yeah. Interesting. Lots of fanfic out there, but a lot of self-published stuff too, that like Spider-Man or TME. Well, yes. I mean, the thing is, our laws here are a little different. We if you let your trademark be exploited by somebody else, it's assumed that you have abandoned your trademark. So, and no company in the world who has an IP wants to see that happen. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the public domain, but there's a lot of stuff what's called abandoned properties, or abandoned orphan trademarks and things like that, which technically are still trademarked if they've been kept up, and if you take your chances when you do that.
If the owner comes out of the blue and says, like,
That's
"Hey,
right.
you made $100 off my thing. Give me $20."
Yeah, you're obligated to do it.
Yeah.
Now you can fight it, but it's going to cost you way more to fight it than it is just to pay them off.
That it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so like, what happens with the fan fiction stuff on Archive of Our Own? Pretty much anything you can think of that's big has hundreds, if not thousands, of stories and whatever. And they but the thing is, they don't charge for it, so nobody stops them. It's just like, and some of these people, they end up getting commissioned and hired by major publishers. One of the girls who, Leah Moore, who's working for Marvel, she was discovered doing Harry Potter fan fiction, and got a job at Marvel and Dynamite based on that.
Mhm.
So, and back in the, old man talking again. Remember back in the days, what was that, Alter Ego, or what was the name of that?
Yeah, there's a magazine called Alter Ego.
Yeah, well, there was that other one too. The one that was like a tribute to EC Comics.
Oh, Squatron.
Squatron, right? Yeah.
Squatron. Yep.
Yeah. So there, I mean, there's a history of people doing work for nothing or free, or very little, honing their craft, and then they make the big leap to the.
Yes, and the thing is, everyone, and that's the thing. A lot of people, a lot of people don't realize everything has a beginning. Every Star Wars, every Matrix, every Wizard of Oz, every Spider-Man, all had an idea. Okay, it was not to formation. It's because someone took a chance and did it and put it out there and let the market decide, how successful it was going to be. And as I said, you don't know whether it's something you have, an idea you have, it's going to be the next big thing unless you actually go out and do it. And that's why crowdfunding is so uh, advantageous for people who are just starting out. It says fan art rules for selling are that most of the art has to be commissioned rather than produced for large scale sales. I dealt with that. Yes, there is sort of an unwritten rule that you're allowed to do fan art and sell in maybe low quantities, but at any time, if they decide to crack down on you, they can. Okay, so you're taking a risk when you're doing stuff like that, regardless. So if you're willing to take that chance, then more power to you.
I
Cease and desist.
remember. Now, did I imagine this, or was there a time at conventions when you were not supposed to put any Lucas or Star Wars or Lucasfilm fan art on display because they were afraid that someone from Lucasfilm would show up at a convention? And
No, I don't think we've ever had a problem with that. I'm sure that we've always been on the razor's edge of parody. So it's like one of those things.
sometimes you go over that edge, my friend.
It's sort of like that Seinfeld bit. He said, "Give me what'll kill me, and just take it back a notch." So it's just one of those things that's like, uh, uh, we do whatever we can to stay in business, and that's the things that we walk a very fine line. But like I said, it's like there's a lot of things there's a lot of introspective that we need to, and I have a feeling that Marvel and DC don't care. That's just the way it is. And as long as Marvel and DC don't care, then the comic industry is going to flounder until another company comes along to give people what they want. That's why manga is kicking their butts, because manga is giving people what they want, and they're giving it in a format that's affordable, that is and that's entertaining.
It's apolitical. Sorry, Larry, but I think that we got to get away from that shit because first of all, it doesn't age well.
You can do both. Okay, the thing is that you can do both. Okay, why do you think comics are so expensive? Why do you think collector comics are so expensive? Why do you think that? It's supply and demand.
Yeah,
okay,
if
Action Comics #1 had 1 million copies printed, a million copies printed, and all of them survived, do you think to be worth $16 million?
No, but here's the thing. So now, so now we're paying for bragging rights. You're paying for the bragging rights to say I own an original Action Comics #1. But
that's what the collector's mentality is about. Like I said earlier, there's that fear of missing out. The thing about it is that there's so many people who wanted Action #1, but there's only so much supply. Okay, and certainly if I were, let's say I'm let's say I'm one of those storage hunters, and I buy a locker unit, and lo and behold, I found a box. Let's say I find 5 boxes of mint copies of Action Comics #1 from 1938. I find 500 copies. How do you think that's going to affect the market? They're all perfect mint condition copies. Okay, that's going to kill the market. It's going to crash the market. Okay, nobody. The guy who pays $16 million for a copy says, "Boy, I'm a dumbass."
Yeah,
and that's another thing. Who the hell is paying $16 million for a comic?
Well,
who? I've always wondered about that. Okay, that guy must have such a huge bank account. I want an Action Comics #1, and I'm going to pay $16 million for it.
He's probably an oil sheik.
That would have to be Bill Gates level of money, man. Who can, or it could be like a group of people got together and bought it and said, I'm going to have Action Comics #1 on Monday. You get it on Tuesday. You get it on Wednesday. You know?
Right. So let me address Larry for a second here. Larry, I mostly agree with you there.
If
Okay.
comics lost value, not worth anything. Well,
Okay.
no, the value of the comic is in the comic itself, the reading of the comic. That's the value.
Okay.
The value is the entertainment value. Comics itself physically is just paper, just like money is paper. If you look at money, what is money? It's just paper. Okay, what makes money valuable is the faith we put into it. Okay, if everybody in the world suddenly were to say this money is not worth anything, okay, then it's not worth anything. It's paper. Right. Okay, Confederate money, it was worth something during the Civil War, but after the Confederacy lost, what's it worth now? Nothing.
We'll see about Bitcoin.
Comics, anyway. The comics value is in the entertainment value. It's the ability to make you feel something, to make you change, to make you want to be transported into a world where there's characters exist and you want to be part of that world.
Right.
You know?
Now, when we were
call it nail in the coffin, you don't have enough pure readers here. Well, that needs to change. We need to get more pure readers.
Right.
The only way to do that is to create things that people will want to read.
Right. I think
kids don't want what dad likes. Well, that's fine. Kids never liked what dad liked. Yeah. That's why we need to create things that kids will like. Money laundering is Comics are the perfect vehicle to money launder. Oh, we do so well. We can launder comics through money. The covers is a fun idea and adds to the comic, but without story, the alt covers keep comics on life support. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Comics is a mix of visual and prose. It has to be the perfect synergy. One needs to be in perfect balance and unity. If it's not, then you're not going to have a good comic.
Then you have crappy Todd McFarlane comics.
Yeah. Well, Todd McFarlane makes good comics. Okay,
I've read the first 50 issues of Spawn, and those are not literary.
Well, maybe it was just not for you. Okay. Yeah. The thing is, there's enough people out there who will support Todd McFarlane comics. And it's not for me. I'll grant you that. But I cannot deny its success, and I certainly can't deny that he maintains a high level of quality on his comics. Now, as far as the writing is concerned, like I said, I haven't read too many of them, so I can't honestly say. But he must be doing something right because he did over 300 issues. Mm-hmm. The same people that spend $40 million on a painting. Yes. Now talk about money laundering. There you go. No, the only thing you can find out. Yeah, well, it is now. I won't disagree with Larry on that one. FOMO is a con for people who want. I don't have any evidence to back that, but it sure looks that way. You're not kidding with kids like. I'm trying to tell you. Well, I don't know what kids like. I'm not a kid. Okay. The thing is that I know what I think kids like and hope that they like. The thing is that I can only do the best I can. And that, I mean, like the dog man guy, he's not a kid. Okay. But he seems to know what kids like. Maybe
he's almost exactly our age because he's put. First of all, I happen to know that. And second of all, there are jokes in his books that you would have to be a 50-something-year-old man to get. So,
well, maybe he has kids and he beta tests it with them.
Says, he doesn't give a shit because...
Can you read this for me and see if you like it? And he says, no, Dad, it sucks. Okay.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't care if the kids get his Kung Fu grip jokes because there's like a page full of jokes that the kids will understand around that thing.
Well, I mean, if it's new to the kid, he may love it. He says, Kung Fu grip. I want a Kung Fu grip. I mean, the thing is that just because we know it, I mean, it's always something new to somebody else, so, he's taking something that's nostalgic to him and passing it on to the next generation. If the next generation loves the idea of a Kung Fu grip, then great. He's done his job. There's nothing wrong with that.
Let me address Larry because he's in my sandbox right now, right? Okay. Larry. A company like Antarctic Press cannot go head-to-head against Scholastic. They cannot. They don't have the same distribution. Scholastic has decades of school book fairs, distribution, book industry history, children's book author stuff. Like you can't begin to comprehend what the power of Scholastic. I mean, Ben, God bless him, can't even get Dave Pilkey's name right.
It's
So
my
he
English.
cannot
I'm not
even
very good English.
understand what the machinations of Scholastic. I don't understand them. And that's what I do for 8 hours a day during the week. So, with all due respect, I don't know if you understand the kids' graphic novel industry, how the distribution works, who the players are, who the creators are. It's a whole other world. It's a whole other world to you.
Mhm.
Now, having said those things, this is what I was trying to say earlier. A kid with a $20 allowance is going to look at, I can buy maybe 4 22-page comic books, or I can get an issue of Dogman for 12, 13, $14,
Or two mangas.
or 2 mangas. Exactly my point. And that book, that Dogman book, even though there's not a lot of words on each page, has 6, 7 times as many pages as that 22-page comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Same
Yeah, and the
thing.
two mangas were like almost like 1,000 pages.
Even
Between
that's
the
an
two.
even better deal. So if you're not fussing over whether the pages are glossy or what size they are, and you just want to sit down and read a story, the value of a $10 manga for your kid pocket money, for your whatever allowance you get, is like 1,000 times better than the 22-page comic book,
Well,
which
I mean
wasn't.
see that you bring up the point of value also. Okay, this is like
Value is, to
value
me,
and entertainment.
paramount.
You see, that's the balance, that you
Yeah.
have to achieve. And sometimes, but the thing is, when you're a smaller company, you don't have the volume, to publish and print books. I mean, I'm sure Scholastic and they have deals with their printers, because they do such volume, so
Hmm.
they can afford to sell them at a lower cost per volume. But we can't. We don't have that luxury. Okay, we don't have the exposure, But that's okay, because we're hoping that we create something that's different and new, and
Well,
entertaining to them,
your
you know.
your comics are a good value for the your demographic that you're selling to now, and may
Well,
sell to.
that's nice of you to say, but the reality is that it's just barely enough, to
Yeah,
keep us afloat.
right.
The thing is okay. So David Schlosser says exposure to comics is something that doesn't exist like I did. I used
Hmm.
to see comics at grocery store, and yes, exposure is a big deal. But we have the biggest exposure of all. We have Marvel movies, DC movies. The thing is about it is that none of them ever say their source material, isn't from comics.
Hmm.
If I were them, I would say before each movie, I would say, hey, support your local comic book store after this movie, and something like that. But do they do it? No, they don't do it
No,
because they don't care.
no.
Let's see. Looks like Larry sent me a whole crap ton of stuff, and I'm falling behind. Let's see.
Hmm.
David Schloss. Here we go. Now we're going to find. Just find out. Okay. And do that. All right. Well, there's Sky's Cavern Library, which you discovered. That just needs a little plug for his story that's going to be in Furlough.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, go buy Furlough. Sky's Cavern's
Go
Library
buy
is
all
great.
of them.
But McFarlane has also tried to keep the cover price low in his comic. You talk about it, and yes, good kudos to Todd for doing that. You
Hmm.
know, yeah, but AP doesn't have a kids line. Yeah, well, I don't know. I would love to see a kids line, but unfortunately, we just don't have the
Larry,
resources.
the resources,
We
and
should.
you're going up against a like,
A
it's like,
juggernaut.
oh, I can
You
do
think
an anime.
going against Marvel and DC is bad? Try going against Scholastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like saying like, oh, I can do a cartoon. I can make a little cartoon, and I got a
Kids do
cartoon
not
on
like
YouTube.
floppies. I don't
And it's
know.
like, now I'm going to go head to head with to Disney, against Disney, with my cartoon. It's like,
I don't know if
maybe
kids don't
that'll
like
work.
floppies. It's just that they don't have access to it. It like I said, it's like the only way to buy a floppy comic nowadays is at a comic book store, and they're far and few between nowadays. If they were in every grocery store, every 7-Eleven, I did some math on this. There's currently like over 100,000 7-Elevens in this country. If every single one of them had a spinner rack, okay, that would be really good exposure for comics. That if
And
every
I'll
single
tell
one
you,
of them had a spinner rack, and that's just
nobody
7-Elevens.
nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear this, and you poo-pooed it earlier, but this is the fact. You do a spinner rack of comics, you know what's gonna happen to half of those comics?
They'll get
They're
dog-eared and
they're gonna end up in the meat department. They're gonna end up in the freezer case. They're gonna end up underneath the counter. They're gonna end up, like, everywhere but on that spinner rack, and with the pages torn out, and
yes, but
every
the thing is, that means somebody's picking them up. Okay, okay, so they end up everywhere. That means somebody took the time to go to the spinner rack, take a book out, and leave it in the meat department. Okay, so that means that somebody wanted to read it. Okay, so
not necessarily.
well,
We
no,
get
no,
trolled all the time.
yes,
We get
necessarily,
trolled
because I
all the
know.
time.
Why would anybody want to take the time to take something to ruin it? Okay, and take the chance that they'll have to pay for it if they did that. Okay, the thing is that I believe, I have faith in humanity to the point where I think most people would be respectful of a spinner rack. You may not think so. Maybe in your neck of the woods that may be true. But, the thing
You
is
don't work
that
in retail, my friend.
I believe that if a kid, if it's brought up right, okay, when he sees a spinner rack, okay, he's going to go and look at that spinner rack. He may not buy a comic, but he's going to darn well look at it. Okay, he may pick up a few books to look at, flip through it. He may even be enthralled by the characters, the story. He may start reading the story and say, wow, I want to take this home. The thing is, but he doesn't have that opportunity because he'll never see a spinner rack. Okay, and the thing is that when the kids are very curious people, kids are very curious individuals. Okay, when they see something new they've never experienced before, they're going to check it out. Okay, because that's our nature. Okay, we're
Right.
curious as humans are curious. The thing is that if they've never seen a spinner rack before in their whole lives, okay, and they suddenly see one, okay, that's brand new and it's filled with comics, okay, all sorts of kinds, full of color, different characters, and it's just reaching out to them, they're going to be gravitating toward it. I guarantee it. You put a little hidden camera there with a spinner rack, I guarantee every day you're going to see kids milling around that spinner rack. I promise you that.
Well,
Okay.
the store owner that spent $5 or spent $2.50 hoping to make $2.50 off of a $5 comic.
But the thing is the whole idea of spinners is volume. Okay, that's always been that's always been the key. Okay, you don't sell 100 comics and make money off that. If you had distribution all across this country to 100,000 spinner racks, you can reduce the comic because the cost of the printing goes down. You can take it down to $1.50, to $2 a book, and that is more attractive. Because that's the reason comics are so high, because printers, have to do setup charges, they have to pay the people. If you're only going to do 100 copies, I have to charge you more because the setup is more. But if you're going to do 100,000 copies, the price goes way down. And instead of $1, it's 10 cents. So now you can afford to sell your book for $1.50, $2, and still make some money off of it.
Right. Right.
The thing is that it's a volume that's always been the key to success in comics. All you need is of course you need the viral hit. I don't disagree with them there. Agreed about Scholastic. So I don't think your finger is on the pulse. Well, maybe so. I'm probably a boomer, being nostalgic. But the thing is that things that are old do make a comeback. I mean, LPs have made a comeback. People collect LPs. Why would in the world would they collect LPs? Nobody has a record player anymore. Or at least very few people. VHS is making a comeback. What the hell?
LPs are very, compared to what they were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they're very niche now.
Everything old is new again. Okay, if nostalgia is not such a big factor, why in the world did American Graffiti do so well? Okay, why
because there's a lot of boomers out there who like that shit.
Why in the world did that 70s show do so well? I mean, the thing is, people, just because it's old, there's a saying that says everything old is new again. Okay, just because you didn't experience it, doesn't mean it's bad. Okay, I mean, when I was growing up, I was fascinated with World War II. Why do you think people buy old comics? Okay, if that was true, then why in the world would people buy old comics?
Okay, so I was
Okay,
making
it's no one cares about old comics anymore. Let's
okay,
just
so
go with the
I was going to
new.
make I was going to make a point about the old comics and the Superman #1 and all that. So when we were kids, they almost never reprinted a comic book. If you missed an issue of the X-Men, that was a whole, not just in your collection, but in the story that you were reading, right? You're like, what happened? I missed you want to
No,
talk
no, I
about,
disagree with you. They did reprint comics. They usually put it with a new cover, with a new and or stuck it into like annuals or specials. Because I remember Marvel Tales were reprints of Spider-Man comics.
yeah,
They just put a new
and
cover on it.
okay, so but those are like top tier. Like if I missed an issue of Devil Dinosaur
Well,
or
why would you
Killraven,
reprint a book that didn't sell? There's no reason for you to do that.
but they now you get those $50 collected editions. Like they've been doing those essential Marvels for how long now? They're scraping the bottom of the barrel for years, but it's like pretty much everything. You don't even have to have a floppy comic book collection anymore. You could just have a whole bunch of those essentials if you
Yeah,
just bought them for the
yeah. I mean,
story.
I don't disagree with you there that you can just have a digital library. That's fine. If you want, if you're happy with reading comics on a computer or your phone, hey, more power to you. That's great.
Hmm.
I don't mind that. That's why we do the Antarctic Press app. We
Hmm.
have our own app where people can read old Antarctic Press comics. We have comics on Global Comics, which is a digital website where you can read old Ninja High School copies,
Right.
without having to buy, and that's fine. We understand. We're not totally opposed to the new dynamic of the digital technology. We understand that, and that's another revenue source that we take advantage of it. AP is not in a position to not take advantage of every single revenue source that we can come up with.
Right.
Because the more revenue sources you have, as a publisher, the less you're reliant on just one revenue source.
Right. I think that was a great idea to get the AP app, and
Right. We've always
Joe's
been
a
that way
great
because
idea. I'm not just sucking up to him because he's
that
kind of my
that
boss.
that old saying of putting all your eggs in one basket it's so true.
Hmm.
You put all these publishers who put all their eggs in the diamond basket. Oh boy, they're hurting now.
Hmm.
Okay, the thing is that over reliance on one source of income is always going to bite you in the butt. Always.
Hmm.
That's why you need to diversify your. I mean, we go by the. Most people suggest you go by the 33% rule. Do you know what the 33% rule is?
Refresh our memories.
Okay, well, when you're thinking of investments, you do the 33% rule. 33% high risk, high return.
Hmm.
33% minimum risk, minimum return. 33% of low risk, low return.
Hmm.
Okay, so this way, if any one of them crashes and burns, then you still have you're not destitute. Okay,
Right.
and that's the thing is that that's why there's so much of this fear. People are paying hundreds of dollars for a comic that just came out last week. What kind of
That's insane.
insanity is that?
That's
That's
insane.
that's insane.
But
Okay.
which goes back to what I was saying, like a lot of these high ticket things, even like old comics that are scarce, they're like, it's like for the bragging rights of saying like I have this rare old thing, either rare thing or old
Well,
thing.
you could say that, or you could say that I actually want to read a fucking thing. Okay, I mean, sometimes I'll buy an old comic, and because I just want to read it.
I know.
I'm not going to pay top dollar for it, because I'm first of all I'm not that rich, but if I ever bought an Action Comics #1 and I got it slabbed, the first thing I'm gonna do is cracking that fucking slab open, and I'm going to read that Action Comics #1 from cover to cover. I'm going to open it, I'm going to smell it, I'm going to look at every single printing defect that's in there. I'm going to feel it between my fingers, the page of this 1938 comic book, because to me, I'm holding a piece of history. Okay, this comic appeared in 1938 in June. Okay, on a newsstand. Okay,
Right.
some kid paid 10 cents for that comic, brought it home, read it, kept it, and for the last 80 years, it survived. Okay, and when I own it, I'll say, holy crap! It took 80 years for this comic to make that journey from that newsstand in June of 1938 into my hands. That is a journey. Okay, and that's why it's so valuable, because it's made that journey. It deserves to be that valuable. Because it's such a huge part of history. And I think a lot of people don't understand, because it's not just a comic. Okay, it's part of history, and that's what people are really trying to own. Is that part? That's why they're willing to pay that much, for
Right.
something. Because it's a time machine. Okay, it's basically you're traveling back in time, and experiencing what it was like to buy a comic in 1938. That features the very first appearance of Superman, a character that everyone knows. Okay, who's
Right.
beloved, who survived all these years as a popular character. Most characters die in 10 years. Nobody remembers them in 10 years, most characters. But Superman has survived. That's why he's worth $16 million. But like I said, if I found a warehouse full of Action Comics #1 in near mint condition, it wouldn't be worth $16 million anymore, would it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe if you read all of them except one, that one would be worth $16 million by itself.
I mean, really.
Here's the thing. I'm going to address some of the things that have been said here.
Uh-huh.
So, one of the things we were talking about manga being a great value is
Oh, wait, I'm far behind on my chats. Hold on. I should have
well,
been paying
I
more
was just going
attention.
to kind of blanket talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah. It says kids aren't the buyers, it's the parents. Well, kids used to be the buyers. You see, that's the thing. You price comics where they can buy them again, make their own choices. Nothing is better for a kid.
If kids get a $20 gift certificate, they come in and they buy Dogmen and manga.
Yeah, it's published in, yes, not anymore though, because there's a lot of indie comics out there now. You have a choice. Companies like Antarctic Press, companies like, smaller companies that are out, like Niobe Comics, and you have a choice now. And that's the thing. They're no longer the gatekeepers, because people can now print their own comics. So why aren't we seeing more pages in manga for AP? Well, we're trying. It takes a lot of time and effort.
Okay, so here's the thing about that.
We do stuff like that though.
Manga is first published in Japan in phone books like Shonen Jump, 30 pages a week on average, and they have their own way of producing that down the do they still do the assembly line thing, Ben? Where
Yeah,
like the
I'm sure they do.
master artist does the main thing, and then the gun
Yeah.
guy draws all the guns, and then the card
Well,
guy.
it depends. Right now we're creator centric, so the creator is responsible for producing the book. So later says you complain. I don't think I'm complaining. I'm just
Maybe he's
making
talking to me.
observations, on things that hopefully, and the why we're feeling well. I think I'm doing something about it by staying in business. Anarchy Press is still around. I'm hoping that someday it'll make a big enough impact where we can actually, make become a player, as they say in the industry. They do Supergirl shows the comic right at the end, also Morrow. Well, good. I'm glad that they're doing that. That's very good news to hear. After years, well, our goal is not to go head to head. Our goal is to provide an alternative. If anybody who goes head to head with Marvel and DC is going to get crushed, because they've been around for so long and they know what they're doing. They have experience. It's like, some guy who's a WWMA multi fighter, and me going against that, he's going to crush me. Okay. I may think I can beat him, but realistically, I couldn't. And I have to tell myself that's not realistic. I can't do it. I would have, many companies have tried, Valiant has tried, CrossGen has tried, many companies have tried to go head to head in Marvel and DC. And guess what? They're on the ash heap of history.
Okay, so again, you guys are talking about apples and oranges. You're talking about a comic book publisher versus a book publisher, and with that book publisher only just relatively recently got into comic books and graphic novels. But they have had Scholastic has an infrastructure that gets them literally everywhere. Ben, you're successful-ish at the niche that you're in. Otherwise, you would.
Let's just say we do well enough to stay afloat.
Yeah, well, no, you do well enough. You've done well enough to. I mean, you've had very high highs, and you've had some lows, and you've stayed. But it's always been enough to keep you in business for the 40 some years that you're around, right?
Yeah, our mission statement has always been to provide an alternative,
Right.
and to support creators wherever we can,
Right.
and to do my own comics. I mean, that's because I'm lucky in that. I'm lucky in that I can write and draw my own comics if I need to. So I'm not reliant on other creators to create content, for Antarctic Press. I can do my own thing,
Right.
So McFarlane needs to bring his content back to showing off less horror-based stuff. He will smash the market so hard. He has something going on. But I think realistically speaking, Tom McFarlane knows he can read the tea leaves that comics are not his main source of revenue. It's his toys. He knows that. That's why he did it. He's seen other comic book creators rely strictly on comics, and they've crashed and burned and ended up, many of them ended up penniless, without health insurance and forgotten. He doesn't intend to be that. He's setting up a situation for himself that his name will be remembered throughout history. He's not a dumb guy. He knows what he's doing, and if he wants to do more, he can. He certainly has the resources to do it, but he decides that this is the direct course he wants to take. Kudos to him, because at least he's, not destitute, in some nursing home, I mean, where, forgotten, even though he may have created some of the best known characters in the world, so he knows, he's realistic about the whole situation. I'm with AP to retake my spot. Good for you, Larry. I hope to see that someday. I want you to be number one. You're number one in my eyes. Let's see. I think there's so much old age mentality. Well, yeah, because we're old. Hello. But, with age comes with experience. You know what they say. Face it. I'm older and I have more insurance. Like if HEB had comic, it would be if HEB had comic. Yes, I agree. I know people who work at HEB, and I've actually considered going to, but HEB just doesn't see much value in having comics in their stores. I hope to change their mind someday. Love a good spinner rack. Hell, who doesn't? Okay. Magazine distro had decided no longer carry bi-weekly or monthly edition because of 90. Well, yeah. That is a shame.
So I've noticed that too, like in my supermarket, like at Bonds, almost all the magazines are like special editions, like the Knights Templar, Time Magazine presents, or astrology, and then they only do it like quarterly, or I haven't seen.
The thing about the damages he's talking about, back in the day, when comics were what, 10 cents, 25 cents, even $1, that wasn't much of an issue as far as damage was concerned, because they were so cheaply printed anyway. It was expected, to have damages, but now everyone is in a collector's mentality and everything has to be perfect,
right?
So that no. But the thing is, you're not aiming it at the collector's mentality. You're aiming it at the casual reader. You're aiming it at the kids. And if it's $1.50, who cares? It's a little dinged up. If it's a book you want, you're gonna pay the $1.50 and get it. It's just, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be entertaining. Happened back in 2001, 11. I was a pharmacist when the change was made to deluxe and.
So again, this is apples to oranges, but
monitors at the grocer can now advertise products. Once we saw the cashier, your head turned away from purchase. Yes, we live in an increasingly digital world, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. How many kids do you know buy tracks You know, I saw my kids growing up. They read comics, but I bought them for them. But they're not casual readers anymore. They just don't. They just don't bother with them anymore. My daughter used to read comics a lot. You know, in fact, she still has a lot of them. You know,
So I don't know if you guys have ever actually seen it, but IDW did an experiment for comics for kids. They're
is
kind
that
of a
wrong?
hybrid between graphic novels and comics. They were sold for about $7 or $8, and like there would be about 15 pages of new material, and then the back of it was like reprints of like they did a Black Panther one, for example. There'd be like 15 pages of a new Black Panther story done with kind of like kid friendly artwork, and then the last half of it would be like the origin story reprint and maybe a more contemporary story that's kid friendly enough to be reprinted in a kid comic, but not childish.
So it says
And
here, Walmart, Archie is given top head turn shelf. What does that mean? Top head turn shelf.
it's
You recognize that term?
if
Oh,
you're about this high,
oh, okay, I got you. Okay, well, at least Archie.
Archie's like
Kudos to Archie's, but
Archie's
even
like
Archie.
decades old with like cartoons and the live action TV
Didn't I read
series.
somewhere that Archie is no longer publishing comics? They're licensing it out now too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they're no
So
longer
it is.
publishing.
But they don't need to do anything
Yeah,
new.
I think Marvel and DC are looking at that. They're
Yeah.
going to see how well Archie does with who's the new publisher? Do you remember? Can't remember off the top of my head. If someone in the comment section knows, let me know. Speak, comment section. But if Archie is successful with that, I'm pretty sure someone executive at Warner Brothers and DC are looking at it and says, hey, if Archie can do it, I think Marvel and DC can do that. 60 backers plus. Let that sink in. Well, good for you, Larry. I'm glad to see that. Let's see. Now we guys, so they should just release comics as books over 100 pages. Then, well, that's what manga does. But a lot of people don't know this. That manga, they don't release comics in 100-page formats. They release them in like 16 to 24-page formats in these huge telephone-sized books.
Yes.
As part of an anthology. Okay,
Right.
so they will actually get their own title. They're part of several titles, and the readers vote on who the most popular title is. And then, only then, if there's enough demand for it and there's enough material for it, then they put them in these manga-sized things.
Which
basically, what you're reading is stuff that's already 5 to 10 years old.
Right,
you're reading the old stuff.
That stuff has already been super profitable in Japan before it even came over here, and whatever they're making here is just like finding change in your couch.
The Seattle capital city, way back, most publishers. Yes, but the thing about it is, I mean, I'll be honest with you, we had a good relation with Diamond. Diamond wasn't the perfect distributor for us. We had our run-ins, but Diamond was always at least willing to work with us. And I may not always agree with their business practices, but they were always nice to us and they were always respectful. Not so much with the other distributors because they don't seem to care about indie comics, or at least indie publishers, as far as I know. That could change. I'm hoping it does. We'll see how it goes with time. But the thing about it is that the whole Capital City and Diamond thing would not have happened if Marvel didn't think that they could distribute their own comics. It all started when Marvel bought Heroes World and thought, hey, we're doing great. We're kicking ass. Let's distribute our own comic. This way we keep 100% of the proceeds, without realizing that they didn't know what the hell they were doing. Okay, so that created a cascading effect that, having to deal with 1,000 retailers was way more than Marvel could chew. It says, that was a big fucking mistake. So, and that caused the crash to go, because once Marvel became exclusive with their own distributor, then everyone started to become exclusive, and that's what killed the comic book industry back in the day. And I was surprised that it survived, because of that. But and Diamond actually offered AP exclusivity. They did, But you know what? I morally could not accept, because I felt that was going to be detrimental to the industry, and I proved to be right. It was detrimental to the industry, but it took only 30 years to find out.
Well, you know what they say, the difference
We could have
between
been at the very front of the catalog because we start with A, and and who knows what might have happened back then. We could have had 30 years of top tier sales, but the thing was, I let my morality get in the way of making a buck. But I just felt it was wrong, and that's why I didn't do it. But now the comic industry is, I'm not going to say dying, but it needs to change. It needs to. I like to think that comics is still, is vibrant because of all the creators that are coming along. All the different things they're going, and people are becoming more and more exposed to comics. It just the business model needs to change. That's what needs to happen. More people would buy them. That's the mentality we are in. Yes, we want to have more people. I think are being more exposed to comics than ever because of digital. I will tell you what, that on the digital websites, AP Comics do well. We sell a lot. The trouble is, it's pennies. We have to sell a lot of digital downloads to make any money off those things.
Well, as an
We would have to sell
example,
millions.
well, as an example, you're only sold like what, 800 copies per issue, but on Global Comics, it's got like thousands of downloads and views. So,
for bang for the buck, that is true. Why spend millions on a book to read when you can read the same book reprint at $4? He's got a point there.
The bragging rights.
People buy slams. Well, I don't mind buying a reprint if I can read the book. I bought just at a convention the other day. I bought a $1 reprint of the first appearance of Green Lantern, the Golden Age version, and I read that book, and I thought to myself, "This is the crappiest story I ever read," but it only cost me $1. So if I had to buy that original first appearance of All American Comics, 16 with Green Lantern in it, I would have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, to read it, and only to find out it's a crappy story. At least I only was in it for $1, and I read the story, and I found out people in the Golden Age really didn't talk about bad writing. I don't know what it is about. But I understand in context it was meant for kids,
right?
And kids have a much, higher, much lower expectation on what they're reading, back then, because there wasn't anything else. Okay, there was no TV. You can listen to the radio, but it's not the same as reading a comic. And you go to the movies. So there were very few entertainment choices.
Go to the library.
But now we're just multi-million choices for entertainment, and comics is just one of them. And that's what we need to do. We need to make comics cool again. We need to make comics, make them want to read them. And manga has shown there is a demand to read. Harry Potter has shown that there is a demand for reading. You just have to put out the right product. I mean, we haven't yet discovered that breakaway hit, but we'll get it sooner or later. I appreciate Ben's love of the OG printings, but most pre-89 books are relic to collectors today. Key books are fine and grand. Yeah, of course. They're old. What do you expect? In a lot of them weren't good. At least in my opinion. You may disagree, but
back when we were into public domain comics, we were kind of like looking.
Oh my God, we've been here for an hour and 30 minutes. Oh, has it been that long? Okay, well, should we shut it down fairly soon?
Oh, it's more like 2.5.
Oh, he's talking to you, Steve. He's talking to you.
Oh.
So what's he talking to you about? Well, Ben, I say an idiot can make a comic book. It's selling it that's hard. Well, I don't like to think of myself as an idiot, but I would probably say that, it takes some talent to make a comic book. You have to be able to draw it and write it, and not only that, you have to get it out there for other people to read and draw it. It's one thing to read and draw a comic for yourself. It's another thing. Yes, selling is hard because you're trying to convince people to part with their hard-earned money, in the hopes that you're going to entertain them.
Pimpin' ain't easy.
Right. Well, okay, I read that one already. Let's see. And my goal is to go head-to-head. Larry, if anybody can go head-to-head, you sure can, because I tell you, you got the hardest head that I know of. If Image Comics can do it, so can AP. Well, yes, Image was helped a little by the 7 most popular comic book artists ever on the planet at the time. Uh,
Yeah,
but
but also Image now is not what Image was back then. They do get
yeah,
into they're
yeah,
in like
I would almost venture to say Image is more like Antarctic Press now.
they are very much well. Actually, they got into regular bookstores when the getting was good, and they're still in regular bookstores. And despite being well distributed, they don't have a single bestseller in the book market. So
Well, I mean, they did do Walking Dead, you know, and all that. And then they have the new book out called Dork that's super popular. I don't know how popular it is, but people are paying big bucks for it.
yeah,
Uh,
well, that goes back to what I was saying about millennials running the show. They're so into millennials and Zoomers. It's like they're super into Dungeons and Dragons, and it's
well, I tell you what, I'll
Dungeons
make a
and
prediction
Dragons
on
book.
Dork. I'll make a
Huh?
prediction on Dork. Right now, Dork is one of those hot comics right now that's going for like hundreds of dollars. You
Mhm.
know, I will be surprised if it lasts past issue 20.
Oh yeah, there's only so
Well,
much you can do with that.
Well, on different pages, I just want to get my book out there and just get. Well, that's all we want. That's all we. Of
Hmm.
course, it helps to have it become a huge success, and so you can make $1 million and retire for life. Then you need to try to break the glass ceiling and reach for the very ceiling. I'm trying, man. That glass ceiling must be made of bulletproof glass because it's hard. There's a reason I one of the better. That is true. You know, that's we do love us. I do love me some Niobe. In that fight, yes. Damaged product lands on the publisher too. Too risky for magazine and greeting card distributor houses. Yes, that's the thing. You know, it's a physical thing. Physical things tend to get damaged. That's the chance you take. You know, and that's why you, you just have to take your chances. You can't guarantee it. You know, I mean, I'm not going to put comics behind glass. You know, I want people to pick it up and read it. You know,
Hmm.
you just got to make it cheap enough where it's the minute they pick it up, they're going to buy it. I do have Drive, but I also have a 2-year to look after and raise. The juggling is hard. Yes,
Hmm.
juggling family is hard, especially when you're trying to achieve your dream. You know, it's a matter of dedication. You know, if you really want to see it come to fruition, you gotta make the effort. That's Shonen Jump. Yes, jump, jump, jump. That's just one. Okay, there's like 50 manga anthologies out there that you don't know of. I know that when I was in Japan, the newsstand was full of them. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just you couldn't you be knee deep in manga.
It's like they don't have any trees in Japan just from one month of
Oh,
publishing.
I know that, Ben. Should we do the same thing as the Japanese? I don't think so. I think what works for the Japanese doesn't work for us. First
No.
of all, the Japanese never had a comics code. And second of all, Japanese are a very homogeneous, population, and they're very small country. So a lot of people commute. So they're passing newsstands all the time, and there's a lot of mom and pop shops where there's newsstands that get comics and they service the neighborhoods, that they're in. We're a very mobile country where we drive everywhere. We only stop in the places when we want to get something. There's no longer the community aspect of it that used to be part of our, used to be part of our culture, so to
Right.
speak. The thing is that with social media, people can now contact people, across. I can talk to Steve, and he's in California, and it's like he's right next door because of the technology, But in Japan, it's not so much because everyone's crowded together, and but even in Japan, manga sales are starting to decline. People are
Mm.
starting to buy less and less manga. It maybe Japan is just 20 years behind us. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up to the point where manga is no longer as fashionable or as needed as American comics are now. Who knows? It's just one of those things that what we need to do is change what we need to fix here. The only thing I would say would be a good example of the Japanese is to get it into as many venues as we humanly can. You know.
Well, you know how we got kneecapped, right? Is it there were used to be comics for everybody, and then like in the 1950s, we had those seduction of the innocent trials,
Mhm.
and then they kneecapped everything and nerfed everything because it was like it had to be. When did the comics code? Was that
I
a
think it was
result
like the
of that?
mid '50s. It was like the early to mid '50s somewhere. I
Yeah,
don't know sure exactly,
th-
but
those dec- those decades of like the seduction of the innocent and then the comics code and all that. So then comics just became like for kids for decades, and it was always thought of as being for kids, and they were written for kids. And as long as it was like
yeah,
you could get away with it being kid
yeah.
friendly,
The comics code, the structure that is in the comics code was definitely the beginning of the infantization of comics. It took
right?
us like 20 years for it to finally get out of those doldrums, but
Right.
but now that's no longer an issue. The
But
issue now is distribution and exposure. You know, and that's and content. Those are the three main areas that need to be worked on in order for comics to thrive again. You know, Shonen Jump is basically like a solicitation for a vote. I don't know how it works. Well, basically, every issue of Shonen Jump, I'm not sure every issue, but you're allowed to vote on your favorite manga. And the manga with the most votes usually continues, and the ones with the least are usually cut in favor of a new manga. You know, this way they keep uh, material fresh and in constant rotation. And I'm not sure if that's the way it is now. I haven't been to Japan in a long time. So, but my understanding is that's the case. So, see, isn't that true democracy?
I don't even
Hmm,
remember what he's
I don't know
talking
what that.
about.
I don't know what context that is in. Change charge the same for digital as you do for physical, just like just like game. Yes, we could do that, but I think our sales would suffer. You know, I think that I think the expectation is that since you're not getting anything physical, digital needs to be cheaper. You know,
Hmm.
then you're making money. Yeah, yeah. If we maintain the same sales on digital with a higher cover price, yeah, I would love that. You know, that would be fantastic. You know, but like I said, I don't know what I mean, we could try it and see if it happens,
I
but
don't.
I
I
don't
don't
think
know
it
if
would work.
people want a nice object. When
Yes, they want to hold it,
yeah, when you're buying a comic, you want the object. When it comes to
but
games,
the same
cartridges
thing
have
can be
some.
said. Well, that's not always true. The same thing is about TV and movies. I mean, the thing is, you don't hold it, but you're entertained by it. You know,
Yeah,
when you, I would venture to say, how much does it cost you to see a movie? $10 right now. So you go to a movie, you're entertained for 2 hours, and what do you leave with?
no,
Nothing. All you're left with is the experience of the
right,
movie. At
right,
least for the comic, you're walking out with something. You know,
yeah.
you're holding it in your hand. You can go to it anytime you want. You could pass it on to your heirs. You can hopefully maybe it goes up in value, and then you when you watch a movie, does any of that happen? No, none of that happens.
No, but
Okay.
it's like a family experience, like going to the amusement park.
Well, no, but
With the
even
movie,
the family experience, you still have to pay for each family member. At least for the comic, you buy it once, and you can share with every single family member there, just paying for it once.
yeah. But I collect. I mean, I collect movies too. So if I get a Blu-ray, I want like a bunch of shit to come with it. And
Yes, if you but the thing about a Blu-ray, you need a machine to operate that, and you have
yeah,
to buy the machine. The thing is that, and that's fine, okay, and you also have to. And I'm not saying that you can't own a movie, but why do
mhm,
you collect a movie? Because you saw it in the theater and you liked it enough to want to own it. With a
mhm,
comic, you bought it, okay, and it's yours forever, just like just like a Blu-ray, exactly.
right.
But now they're not making them anymore, or at least they're cutting back on them.
But
You
the
know,
difference between a comic and the game is, I've got a nice object here. A, a game cartridge might have some nice artwork on it, but it's
sure.
not like a lovely object to collect.
Of course, you might have political process, much like what's happening here so often. I mean, comics have always been political. I don't, you know, uh, dispute that. Okay, the thing about it being political is that used to be creators didn't insult their readers. Okay, they didn't, disagree because of political disagreement. They worked in their politics into the story, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and made it so that it was, at least if you were being taught something, you were being entertained by it,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Yes, I don't disagree that politics have always been a country. Yes, Captain America punking Hitler was as political as you can get,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and people loved it, okay. Our kids loved it, and that's the thing, is that there is a way to do it that's subtle, and entertaining, without alienating, somebody else. I think nuance is what we're lacking these days. Subtlety and nuance. Right now everything has to be in your face and direct. Because the thing is, once you pass that bridge, it's hard to go back. You can't take it back. It's once you've exposed yourself, then everyone knows who you are. Sometimes it's better to just remain silent and in the weeds and let people guess. And this way, you can continue to entertain while not alienating your potential reader.
Plus, a lot of the political stuff used to happen, like in the mainstream books, it was like propaganda. It's like, oh, we're fighting the Nazis and we're fighting
Yeah,
the Japanese. And then, like in the 80s, a lot of the political stuff became kind of
it was all about the evil corporations. That was the
the
big
evil
thing.
corporate.
Eat the
You're right,
rich type thing.
or
Nairobi
like
28-page book on kids is $10 in order. Well, is that a bad thing, Larry? I mean, geez, you're selling more books. That's what you want, right? Like
mhm,
when you speak of politics and comics, I mean, I have a little pet peeve, about is I always hated Green Lantern number 76 when I read it. That's it's considered a classic, key book.
mhm,
I other than the Neil Adams art, I don't consider it a key book at all. But because of that one scene, there's just one scene in that comic that really, thought was irritating to me.
mhm,
It's where some, I guess, an African American individual comes up to Green Lantern, and he's like I guess he's a lower income individual, and he goes up and he accuses Green Lantern of not caring for people, you know, uh,
mhm.
and I thought to myself, holy fucking shit. Green Lantern has saved this world. How many times? You're asked how many times? And this is the appreciation you give him? Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
that to me was like the worst scene in comics I've ever read, in the history of comics. I've read a lot of comics,
yeah,
and that scene, really irritated to irritate. I mean, I understand the context of it all.
mhm,
He was trying to say, the writer was trying to say, hey, big superhero guy, why aren't you doing more to help us, poor people type thing, and I just thought, you're talking to fucking Green Lantern, okay? Green Lantern. I think the guy you need to talk to is your politician, okay?
yeah.
The people who are actually running the scene. What do you want Green Lantern to do? Okay. Does he use his ring to willpower you $1 million? Is that what he's going to do? I mean, holy shit. And then Green Arrow, the asshole that he is, I never liked this version of Green Arrow, because he was a pompous shithead, and that and throughout the whole series, always lecturing, and always kind of, instead of doing anything about it, it's just like, holy crap. So I love the art. Don't get me wrong. That run is fantastic as far as
Mhm.
the art is concerned. But goddamn, I hated the stories. I
Oh,
really did.
wow.
I really did. But that's just my opinion. You may disagree with me. I'm sure many of you do. Has AP thought about doing English as a second language book? Hit the English teaching market? Yeah, we actually consider that. The trouble is, we just don't have the personnel or the resources to do it. It all comes to who's going to do it and how much is it going to cost.
Yeah,
There's a lot of ideas that we always come up with at Vanderbilt, and Joe, who is the head of the running of the company, he's this main CEO. He always says, who's going to run it and how much is it going to cost?
yeah,
Okay. That's the one thing you need to ask whenever you come up with an idea of wanting to do something. Those two simple questions: who's going to do it and how much is it going to cost?
And also the distribution for that is going to be rough.
And you can get your own 7 top stars. Why can't you? Money. Let's see. Show. Let's see. I'd rather have Zoomers run the show than Boomers. I want anybody who's qualified to do it. I don't care what their age is.
Yeah.
Ben was the first creator publisher that allowed a small story like Blitz release. Oh, of course. I love that story. Blitz was great. You know. 1956. Oh, okay. That's when it came out. 1956. Is that when The Wild One came out with Marlon Brando, 1956? When
I
did
thought
that
we were
come?
talking about Seduction of the Innocent.
No, the Wild One with Marlon Brando. When did that come out?
I don't know.
I think it was in the 50s. Because there's a I don't remember much of the movie, but there was that one line he said I always remembered, where the guy asks him, you know, what are you rebelling against? And Marlon Brando says, what do you got?
Yeah.
See, that's brilliant writing. I mean, holy shit, people don't write like that anymore. I mean, holy crap. And it's so true nowadays. You know, it's like, what are you rebelling against? And people are like, what do you got? You know, what do you got? It's like people are just getting angry because they just want to get angry. You know, it's like if you know, the Incredible Hulk is not very special because everyone's angry.
Yeah,
you know?
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Time to reallocate resources, I suppose you say.
Just read the next one. That's the correct.
Yeah, well, I would love that. You know, it's just that there's not much money left to allocate, to be honest. You know, we want to make sure all our creators are paid. We want to make sure our printers are paid. We want to make sure that all the people who are relevant to keep the company afloat are paid. And I will tell you, there's not much left over unless we can see a huge increase in our circulation. You know, then it's going to be hard to implement new things because, you know, short of getting like a business loan, you know, but the thing about it is the comic book industry, this thing we're in a catch-22. The business industry is not big enough for people who loan says, your industry is not doing so hot. You know, I don't think we want to take a chance that the whole thing could go belly up. So we're, you know, but we're not selling enough to justify getting a loan, you know, and if we were selling well, we wouldn't need a loan, you know. So it's just really a matter. We're sort of like like I said, a catch-22 to do things, and well, I would love to know what the old things that need to go are.
Yeah, me.
Oh, Steve, I would never get rid of you. You're too valuable to this company. That's the trade-off. Well, I don't know what needs to go. You know, I would love to know what needs to go.
Yeah.
You know, everything we have right now is essential. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, everything, every cog in the wheel is turning. You know, any removal of any cog was going to make the machine break down. And that's the thing, is that we cannot afford to take any. Once we have a surplus of, you know, capital, then we can start doing shit. You know, that's the thing, is that why do you think companies want to make profit? So they can do shit. You know, if they didn't make profit, then they can't do shit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, floppy format, the trailer, floppy formats. Unfortunately, we need floppies in order to maintain our cash flow.
Also,
we don't have
Larry,
floppies. You know, the thing is also to do is, and also we need them to build up trade paperbacks. You know, floppies is advertisements. You know, if people like the floppies, they'll buy the trade. You know, and the floppies is a low cost way of trying new ideas without taking too much of a risk.
Also, Larry, the major book publishers have all tried to do manga that's not by Japanese people.
The kids like manga. Hey, I hear you, Larry. We've been doing manga since 1985.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying like if manga made in the United States doesn't fly with the kids, it has to be imported from Japan.
No, that's not true. I mean, Scott Pilgrim was a big hit, and that was
the kids. Well,
yeah.
that was a popular indie comic back when.
Yes, and it was manga. It was manga inspired. People love kids. Love it.
Well,
I think the issue is not kids. Okay, the issue is people. Okay, the issue is not when you're trying to aim at a certain demographic. Okay, know your demographic. Okay,
Right.
if you're going to do an adult comic, knowing that you know
Have
what
your
adults are going to read
expectations
it. You know,
realistic.
don't downplay your readership.
Right.
Okay, don't insult them. Okay,
Right.
do what you can to do the best thing you can. For the audience that you're aiming at.
Hmm.
That's the important thing, and hope that your idea will resonate with that audience to the point where it'll make money. Okay,
Right.
and that's the key factor. Okay, we're not doing this for our health. We're doing it to make money. Okay, we're doing this because what we're putting out hopefully will uh, will resonate with enough people to keep our company afloat. Now he says we need more AP. I agree, but we don't own a lot of the stuff we publish. I would say 75% of the stuff we publish are creator owned. Okay, we don't have the right, to offer their work without their express permission. And we have to get their permission before we can offer that. And that's the problem. We can't just simply willy nilly. Well, we published our book, so we have the right to go ahead and print it any way we want. No. Maybe again, I would love to do that, but I just don't think it's realistic. Even
Also, Larry, if go ahead and look on Amazon and see the difference in the price between a regular physical book and the digital copies that they offer there for your Kindle.
kids 100. I see. I don't think 100% ignore them. I think they just haven't been exposed to it.
Well, I think floppies can coexist. I mean, floppies. I don't. I agree with you, Ben. Like floppies are like the vinyl of the comics industry. They're not going to go away. There's people of a certain age group are comfortable with it. They like it. It's their hobby. It's their habit. But if you want to get like younger readers, you're going to have to like figure out a different format that appeals to the younger readers.
Is
Right now, the
okay.
manga format appeals to them, but also it's a completely unfair business model because they've made so much money in Japan.
Well, kids probably don't even recognize a floppy. The thing is that they haven't been exposed to it. The thing is that they don't know what a floppy is.
Right.
Okay, maybe try to take it to the masses throughout the states on Free Comic Day with cheap giveaways. Yeah, I mean that's a good idea, but that costs a lot of money. The reason AP doesn't do Free Comic Book Day is because we don't have the resources to give away that many comics. We're and while it's successful, I mean, whenever I go to my comic store on Free Comic Day, it's mobbed, it's packed,
Right.
But they come in, they get their free comics, and they leave.
Bingo.
They don't stay to buy comics.
Right.
They just want to get their free comic and go. And I don't, and it certainly hasn't translated into more sales. We don't see
Yeah.
that. That
Mhm.
just doesn't. It's fine, to help promote the comic store, but it's not fine for publishers. Manga format has a tendency to go manhwa. What does that mean? Manhwa, I think, is Korean manga. And is your audience open to slow read? What's slow read? I'd like to read things slow. Let's see. Sounds like AP need to do more creator drives. Sounds like AP need to do more creator drives to get more creators. Well, we try to do it, but we're in competition with a lot of other things. And now with crowdfunding, they don't need AP anymore, really. They can just do their own thing on crowdfunding. The only advantage we have, is that we have been around for a long time, so we know what we're doing. We can get you in comic book stores, which is still gate kept, by distributors. We can offer you digital platforms, like our AP app. I'm sorry, my throat is dry. Hold on. One of the business models that we currently have is that if you do a Kickstarter and it's successful and you want to get in comic stores, send in stuff to us. We'll take a look at it. And if it's something that we think will do well in comic book stores, we'll take it. And the beauty of it is it's already done. You've already finished it. You've already got your money for it. Anything that goes beyond your Kickstarter is just gravy. It's just extra money for you. And that's the business model that works pretty well for us now. And then we've been noticing more and more people doing that. Start with Webtoon NHS series. Actually, NHS is on Webtoons already.
Hmm.
Steve, you need to stop thinking and comparing to Amazon.
Yeah,
Steve, how dare
I'll
you?
stop comparing to the
Naughty, naughty.
most successful online business model in the world. Okay.
That age group is dying out. Yes, unfortunately, that is true. It's not just format. And that's why we need a new generation. It's not just format, it's the ideas and executions. The Asians are the craziest. And I'm Asian, and I have the craziest idea.
Hey!
I'm crazy, Ben. I comics. I lose on every deal, but I make it up in volume. It's worked before for some indie presses that got the right buzz out. Those who want it, get it done. Yes, and it helps that if you do like it, to spread the word. Word of mouth is still very key and instrumental in the success of a lot of comics. If you like it, push it to the cows come home, because you remember that commercial where some lady says, and they tell their friends, and they tell their friends, and they tell
And
their
they told
friends,
two
and
friends.
so on,
They
and so
yeah.
on, and so on. It's so true. Word of mouth, very important.
But Ben, I'll tell you this, like especially since the lockdowns, I was shocked
They
by
say
how
they know what a
little.
floppy is. Well, okay, Larry, if you know a lot of kids who know what floppies is, good for you.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
I don't
You
want to
know,
get personal. I don't want to get
unlike that may be
personal with
true in
that
Canada,
one.
but not in the USA. That Asians, what Asians? Are you trying to stereotype me?
That
There's a
Asian.
lot of Asians. Oh, Koreans? Yeah. I tell you what, you know, I will tell you a little secret. Asians are extremely racist. We are very racist. Uh, let's see.
Wait, I'll tell you a secret too.
What?
Hispanics are racist too.
I do,
Don't
Chinese hate
let my
Japanese,
last name
Japanese hate
fool you.
Chinese, Koreans hate everyone,
Yep.
but Taiwanese, we love everyone. We love you one time. Even the original material is executed well. Well, as far as you just haven't seen the bad ones. Let's see here. Jesus with an S. So it's Jesus. I guess that's a snake Jesus.
Hmm.
Okay, let's see. I'm punching a wall. Oh my gosh, punching a wall. I hope he doesn't have an apartment. Otherwise, he'd have to pay for that damage. Now, why would you punch a perfectly good wall? What did he ever do to you? Manhwa is what? Korean manga. I just said that.
Yep.
Is that what that is? Manhwa? Korean manga? Manga made in Korea? Koreans? Like K-pop demon hunters? Koreans?
Yes.
Korean Chinese.
See, that's what the kids are into these days. Is K-pop.
Isn't Chinese called Chinhua?
Is it?
I have no idea. I'm just making shit up.
No.
They
Hey,
need
remember those
EP to get
Caveman
into it.
comics that came
I
from China?
agree with you, Larry. I agree with you. We need to get them in shops. We need to get them in airports. We
Hmm.
need to get them in Buc-ee's. That's the difference. It's seeping into art development and every higher market, like gaming.
Mm.
Maybe there's something to this manhwa thing.
Mm.
Thank you for letting me know. If AP couldn't do that, then yes, publisher is not needed. Yeah, maybe we're a disappearing brand. We're disappearing. We're fading, just like MacArthur. Old comic book publishers don't die. We
Well,
just
you know what?
fade away, fade
Maybe,
away.
maybe some of your fans don't realize how small AP actually is. Because I mean, basically, you got some of your
Yeah, we're so
art.
small, we don't even rank in the percentage of the market share.
Well, no. I mean, you've got like artists, not in volume of what you publish. I mean, like
Ben,
physically,
I
like
didn't mean
how
to
many
kill you with
people
my
work for you.
question. Oh, well, you find my dead body, you know who to count. You know who to blame. Blade Man. He's the one who did it. He did it. You saw it all.
Yep.
Okay. But I want AP to grow. And yes, I want AP to grow too.
Yeah,
That would be
but
wonderful.
when Ben's talking about the resources, like we're talking in terms of there's the building that AP works out of, and then there's the freelancers like Ben and Fred, there's and me who are elsewhere. But out of that house, it's like the same people who are writing and drawing the comics are hauling in the boxes when UPS drops them off from the printer, and they're the same ones who are repackaging them to be sent off to the stores, and they're writing, creating the comics, and then they're doing production work for some other book that's like not even related to their own creative pet project.
Well, okay, so say everybody says I want AP to grow. Well, the thing is we have grown. I mean, we started off as an infant in 1985.
Yeah,
You know, we became a teenager during the 80s and 90s. Then we
that's
hit
kind
our productive years in the late 90s, 2000s. Now we're entering our midlife crisis in the mid 2000s. Now we're getting to old age, our twilight years. You
mhm,
know, I mean, the thing about life is that all things come to an end. You know,
yep.
I'm really, really to accept that. You know, even Antarctic Press will come to an end. You know, unless someone buys the company or takes it over. You know, I may just if I were to if I were to die, you know, and I will the company to somebody else who wanted it, you know, I just say, hey, take it, do what you want with it. Maybe it'll live on, you know, in the hands of another person. Who knows? But I'll be dead. It won't matter to me, you know, because I'll be gone. You know, the thing is that I know things can't last forever, but you know what? I'm gonna have as much fun as I can while I'm still here. You know, and that's why I like to keep creating. I like to keep knowing, getting to know friends, you know, getting to know people, getting to meet with other creators. You know, I like to think that creator that I put in furlough, you know, or exciting comics, you know, got his start there. Okay.
Mhm.
You know, artist X, he got his start at Exciting Comics, you know, number 17. And now he's a multi-billion-dollar creator who makes movies and, you know, has huge impact on the thing. But he got his start at Antarctic Press, you know, and that's, to me, that's more of a satisfaction than anything in the world, is that knowing that I gave someone their first big break, you know, and that to me is more satisfying than any, you know, 100,000 sales. Oh, I made $3 million on my first campaign. Oh, look at me. Look at me. I'm an epitome of success.
Yeah, and then he
See,
spent that
that's
$3 million
me.
dollars on a
That,
freaking
you know,
Action Comics
that's
number one.
fleeting. Fame is fleeting. Okay. You know, that's the thing. It's your long-term personal, you know, satisfaction that should be important. Manhwa is getting to romance illustrations and finer art. Any finer art. Oh,
Mm.
Steve, did you know that manhwa is getting into finer art?
Why, I did not know that,
Oh,
Ben.
my goodness gracious. Let's see here. Is NR still hell yeah, we've always accepted submissions. We've never stopped. You know, from the very beginning of our existence, we've always accepted. Magazine was an anthology title. You know, how
Yeah,
was we going to do that without submissions? You know, we started off accepting
take
submissions.
submissions, but no domination.
I know submissions.
Mm.
You must submit. Popular in Korea and China, not just a language, it's a level of artistic palette. Ooh, artistic palette. My, aren't we high and mighty? Let's see. What
Well,
does
I
not just
mean,
a language mean? Oh, is it? Oh, I see. He's trying to say that
it's
the
a
manga is just a different language, in a different
well,
language.
I mean, it's a success
Well,
story we can't argue with.
thing
That's for
is, I
sure.
think people are they like this. I mean, living in America, we like to put things in nice, neat categories, don't we? You know, we don't like to have things all jumbled up and messed up. When we like things in genres. So when we say manga in comics, they're essentially the same thing. They're illustrations with words, right?
Well,
So it's just a
it's
different
a
way of saying
format,
it.
right? It's a format, not a genre.
Right. It's a style. It's
Right.
just, but they're the same, essentially the same thing. So when you say manga versus comics, they're just saying comics versus comics. You know,
Well,
it's exactly the same thing. It's just the philosophy is different.
well,
Okay.
what number
The
nine
work ethic
saying?
is different.
Yeah, number nine saying it's a success story that we should take a look at, and to a degree that's true, but a lot of the shojo and the manhwa stuff doesn't really translate. It doesn't translate to our fan base. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't know about that. As he says, maybe AP needs to complete a or steal. Ooh, steal. He's telling us they're breaking the law. Sorry, never My Little Pony or Pokemon. Well, I mean, we could do that, but why? Why would we want to steal My Little Pony or Pokemon when there's already My Little Pony and Pokemon? You know, if we're gonna do something original, something unique, something new. You know.
Well,
Uh,
actually, Noel, there's a Ninja High School card game. There's two of them,
Oh,
right?
a Ninja High School card. Well, I already did a Ninja High School card game. You
Yeah,
probably didn't know because it didn't do that well.
yeah, it's a kicks. Yeah, I've got it over there in the other
Do
room.
you?
But
Of course, I know who you are. Geez,
of
you
course
know,
we know.
if you want people to know who you are, then use your real name. I just assume you didn't want people to know. No one knows how small AP is. Oh, I think a lot of people know how small AP is. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who don't know what AP is. I didn't know for the longest time I was dealing with this. So correct, everyone thinks it's bigger than what it is. Well, yeah, sometimes it's good to have a big reputation.
Yeah,
You
Ben.
know,
I mean, you guys put out like 12 books a month, and which is you guys are so used to doing it, and you just like basically wake up in the morning and crank out books and all that. But like,
okay, he says, okay, hold on. I think licensing with what's a UFS card game?
I don't know, but
Ultimate Fighting
I think
something?
licensing is
Ultimate
probably a
Fighting
better idea.
Simulator? Is that what
Yes.
it is? I don't know. Someone can tell me. Better idea than trying to make a new card game. Well, yeah. I mean, sure, if you want to do it, but like I said, if it's one thing to suggest it, it's another thing to do it. If you think you can do it, do it. Bring it to me. See if make a proposal.
Yeah,
Because
we know
quite
so
frankly,
little
I have
about
no
card
idea what you're
games.
talking about.
I've got a friend who's like totally into card games, and he's tried to explain it to me. And I mean, I'm with Larry as far as my boomer mentality. I'm not even a boomer, but I have a boomer mentality when it comes to card games and video
I'd
games.
offer my services for Outlet California based. Like, hey, he's in your neck of the woods, Steve. If
Yeah.
anyone were to join this outlet, okay. So I have no idea what he's offering. Is he offering to put comics in a base, a military base? That would be cool. Then we could put those Mark Jewelers inserts. What AI ban won't keep AP running forever? We'll all be running by AP.
Yeah,
Let's just say that Terminator. That was a warning.
yeah. Well, Ben. I'm just gonna put your head in a jar, like on Futurama, and then you can run
Like
AP.
Tony Stark.
Yeah.
I got my start there, but what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with it. I would love to have you make it big. If Niobe can make Antarctic Press the number one comic book publisher in the world, then I would absolutely love that.
Hmm.
But do you think the Marvel mongers were ahead of its time, came too early? It's possible.
Yes. Yes,
It's
it sure
possible.
did.
I'm just lucky that they took it at the time when they did. It was just one of those things that, better to be early than to be late. I always say.
I mean, even though how many years after Ninja High School did Mangaverse come out?
Oh, well, Mangaverse came out in 2001.
I mean, even
No,
that
wait.
late.
When was the Twin Towers hit? 2000? Was
Was
2000, right?
it 2000?
Was it 2000? I can't remember. I know it was 9/11. I
That's
just forget the
that's
year.
still. I mean, you still had to explain to people what manga was back then. Like
Well, 2000 is when Mangaverse came out. I know because I had just turned in the pages to Marvel, and that's when the Twin Towers got hit. And I called the Marvel to say he was okay, and he was like, my editor that was like bawling and sobbing, was like really,
oh,
and I said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry," And then I never heard from him again after the thing was over.
so I've
But
got
that's just typical of Marvel.
I've got a Mangaverse story for you, Ben. I don't think I've ever told this to you. So shortly after it came out, the American Bookseller Convention came to town to L.A. and it took up the whole Los Angeles Convention Center. And at that time, San Diego wasn't quite as big as it is now. And so I was walking around thinking like, man, I'm really glad I'm closer to the book industry than comics because this is where it's at. And they made a big deal that they had a graphic novel pavilion. It was like the first time they were trying to sell comics and graphic novels. So I went to check it out, and Marvel literally had two folding tables put together with a vinyl sign hanging out over the front and some boxes for people to flip through. Now this wasn't even like a convention where you're buying stuff. It's a trade show to show off their best and brightest. And Mangaverse was stuck in one of those boxes.
Oh my god. Okay.
Slave wait, slave labor graphics bought a fireworks stand and redid it with their logo and their signs and their posters all over it. And you had to walk through the fireworks stand. They had everything they ever produced in there. All the t-shirts, all the tchotchkes, milk and cheese, all that other stuff. And if you didn't know comics, you would have thought Slave Labor Graphics was the bigger company, like Marvel.
All right. Well, it's nearly 5:30. Do you think we should wrap it up fairly quickly? I know I want to keep everyone here. I'll go through. Let's just go through the super chat. Let's go to the comments real quick,
Our
and then
average
we'll go
chats
ahead and wrap it up. I don't want to keep anyone too long. It says, look at the evolution of art from Astro Boy to Mighty Psychic Girl to Fist of North Star. Vast differences there. Well, yeah. Look at the first Action Comics #1 to current comics now. Can Walking Dead move past its artistic start and into Frazetta level? Gee, I don't know how to answer that one. It really depends on the creator, I suppose. You know, uh, I don't know if there ever will be another Frank Frazetta. There was only one. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see. I have the card game, but when you had it out, cards were not as big as they are now. So do a new Kickstarter for it and see what happens. Yeah, I would do that, but the problem is doing cards was very expensive, and I just didn't. I just don't feel the need to want to do that again. I'm just going to just let it be like a small, you know, part of the Ninja High School merchandise thing that they did. Uh, you have a good position because you're at least in stores. It's impossible for a small publisher to get in. It's difficult. It is. I mean, Diamond. At least I could say this about Diamond was that they were very indie friendly. They would practically give any publisher an opportunity. Of course, when the publishers started to become late, or cancel books, they had to be a little bit more strict in their ability to accept publish new publishers. But yes, it is harder. And the plus the market is shrinking. Universal Fighting, aha! So I guess correctly, Universal Fighting System by Jasco Games. Well, are you allowed to do that? Is it copyrighted? Can you use their system? Inquiring mind needs to know. Now we can't, but don't discard my. I will never disregard your ideas, and there's such thing as a bad idea. It's just a badly implemented idea. 2001. Oh, okay, 2001. Yeah, I thought so. Just wanted to be sure. But you know what happened to Mark Ripley? I worked with him when he had a video game store. He had a video game store? Oh, damn. Well, after about a year or two after Anarch Press was established, we bought out his share of the company, and it became solely my company. I guess we just lost touch with each other. I know that my brother knew his dad very well, but no, I haven't talked to him in literally decades. So I hope he's doing well. I heard he's got a nice family. No, I'm the artist on Blythe. Okay, I thought so. I would love to help out for free as a volunteer to help at any big show in here. Yeah. Well, let me take you up on that offer. We're going to be at San Diego. We're always looking for volunteers to help out at the table. We always can use extra pair of hands. On the car idea with NHS, I would just repros and recycle. Now, if I was going to do a new card game, I'd be an all new version. It'd be an extension of the old one. I don't. Once I put something out, I'm like George Patton. I don't like to pay for the same real estate twice. Let's see here. Always great chat. Yes, you guys are fantastic.
Thank you, guys. We were afraid nobody was going to show up.
But... Yeah, I was afraid that too. I thought, yeah, no one's going to ever wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
This old, bald-headed boomer. I'll have a look at Ben's art from Ninja High #1 to Kendra. It's completely. Well, yes, I hope I've evolved. I'm like Pokemon. I evolve from small Ben to medium Ben to Pokemon Ben. I'm a Pokemon Ben. Pokidun. That's right. I think you have them publish and supply art amid the MN. What does that mean? AMND.
I think you have them published and supply art.
I hate when people do those abbreviations. I have no idea what they're talking about.
And they make it part of their game.
Okay. That's why you're the editor. Make it part of their game.
Yeah, I've had to edit your script.
Believe me. Also it is. We're positive. Okay. Yes, that's what I'm hoping for. Yes, that's gonna kick ass. Let's see here. When we get
Larry,
there, yeah. Well, it's not the destination; it's the journey.
Yeah, Larry, I gave you some shit, man, but you kept the chat lively, and
Oh,
I
he
got
can
it.
take it. He's a big boy. He knows how to do it. You
Yeah,
know, he's run with
those
the toughest
Canadians
of
are
them.
built different.
Okay, well, that's all the comments. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. I appreciate every single one of you who's come and made our live stream a success. We will definitely do this in the future because I am emboldened. You have encouraged me. You have shown that I can do this, and I hope that we will do it again. I'm going to try to make it a regular basis. I guess I'm going to have to actually subscribe to StreamYard now and go ahead and start doing this on a regular basis.
We get
And
some music.
we'll come up with some more topics. We're going to try to keep it light. We're going to try to keep it within the realms of being, respectful and things like that, and try to learn from each other. So thank you, Steve, my compatriot, my buddy, my brother from
Thank you,
another
Ben.
mother. And
Thanks for
we
considering
will
me.
talk to you next time. So until then, everyone, take care of yourself and have a great rest of the Sunday.